Mike. Check, check. Mike, check.
All right. Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bradley Gottschall. I am the Lower Paxton Township Manager. In typical fashion, I'm going to give a brief summary of this evening's agenda, particularly for the benefit of those who may be watching at home, as everyone gets settled in this evening. This is a workshop session of the board. They have a number of items on the agenda. First, to include a public hearing on the matter of the newly created Township Bureau of Fire. We have the room set up, obviously, a little differently this evening. We're going to hear from a number of guests, to include our Public Safety Director, Mr. Koshiba, as well as the Deputy Chief of Fire, Brett Graham, and then also representatives from each of the fire companies, Colonial Park, Lingelstown, and Paxtonia. And the board will then commence with a number of questions and remarks. After that, there will be a presentation of Ordinance 2025-01, which is the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance Amendment. Then, following along that line, the board will hear a presentation of Ordinance 25-05, which likewise and separately, but in the same vein, authorizes the amendment to the Township Comprehensive Plan's land use map. Then following that, the board will reorganize, a holdover from last week's agenda, hear any last announcements, and then finally make a motion to adjourn. With all that said, members of the board are seated and prepared to conduct business. Thank you very much.
According to the agenda, we will first have public comment. Public comment is for any item not on the agenda. If you come to the podium, you need to state your name and your address and the subject you wish to speak about. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes. You have a comment?
Good evening, board and staff. My name is Bill Minsker. I have two non-agenda items I'd like to present, but first, to save some time later during our commenting time on the fire service, I'd like to give a couple items of disclosure so I can save some time. My name, again, is Bill Minsker. I live at 5956 Lingelstown Road on the square. I have been a 78.5-year resident of our township and of Lingelstown. I have been, since about the age of 16, a promoter of not only our township, but also of Lingelstown, which some of you are aware of. Starting at the age of 16, I was your historian twice for the Lingelstown Bicentennial in '65, and then 2 years later for the Township's Bicentennial in '67. I have been active in promoting this township and the village of Lingelstown especially all through that time. Currently, I serve on two of your boards. I have, in regard to the Lingelstown Fire Company, I have been a member since February of 1966. So within a short period of time, I will have 60 years of active service with an organization in this township, which I would like to tell you more about a little bit later. I have been the recording secretary, first elected in the 1970 administrative year. I still serve in that position, and I have watched this organization develop over that 60-year period, of which I would like to tell you more about later. I have responded as an active firefighter until my last call on March the 7th, 2020. I answered at that point 4,866 alarms. I know the fire service, I know this township, and there are some things I would like to tell you about that I don't hear being mentioned, and I'll come back later with that in mind. So now, 2 items very quickly that have nothing to do with the agenda. First of all, the month of May is Pet Appreciation Month. And you would be aware, I think, that last year, a year from this month, the Kiwanis Club of Linglestown area conducted a project to build a dog kennel holding building behind the maintenance building off of Locust Lane. It has been 1 year since we dedicated that building for holding stray dogs until either their owners are found or they go to the Humane Society. The Kiwanis Club of Linglestown, and Mr. Miller, I laid an envelope there for you. The Kiwanis Club of Linglestown, in honor and appreciation for this 1 year now that has gone by in celebration for that time, is giving a $100 donation, a gift check to the feed store on Old Jonestown Road to provide funding for purchasing dog food and supplies and things like that. So we wanted you to have that donation. And secondly, my second item, last Wednesday was the annual firefighter, police, EMS, first responder activity at Dauphin County Heroes Grove. And I was in the process of talking to one of our retired police officers who was there, and I commented to him about I was kind of disappointed that there was not a big public attendance at the event this year, as opposed to other years. And he looked at me and he said, well, I'm not surprised. And he showed me on his phone a message that came out from somewhere, from someone in the township, stating that this event was not a public event and was capitalized. I don't know where that came from. It's totally wrong, and I think you would all agree to that. But somewhere there was a miscommunication with a notice that went out to the public that that event last Wednesday was not an event for the public. So maybe Brad, you can check, or someone, to see that that doesn't happen in the future, because that event is very much designed, as you all know, to recognize our first responders and also do this in front of the public. So I just mentioned this so that maybe somebody can check on this so that it doesn't happen again. Thank you. I'll be back later.
Mr. Minsker, I just want to say that the Kiwanis Club was absolutely instrumental in the upgrade of the kennel, and I commend your club for doing so. Are there other public comments?
I'm going to stand over here because I'm short and this is where I have to go. Did not realize it would be crowded. I'll try and make this brief. I'll talk faster than normal. My name is Kate Scheib. My address is 131 Oak Park Road here in Lower Paxton. And what I'd like to do briefly is give you a little bit.
Kate, I apologize. They're having trouble hearing you through the mic.
Well,
You
then
can
I
bend
will
over more.
stand here, and
Thank
there we go. My name is still Kate Scheib. I live at 131 Oak Park Road here in Lower Paxton Township. And tonight, in order to get the answer that I'm hoping to, I just want to give you a little brief background, a little history. I have one question for our solicitor, and depending on the answer to that question, possibly a request for the Board of Supervisors. As some people in the room know, but other people don't know me, I've spent a lot of my life serving in different government capacities. Since I was a teenager, this is what I do. I think it's now called a moral ambition, I believe, is community service. I have been an elected official. I have sat and been appointed to a number of boards. I've worked hard as a volunteer on different agencies. And the reason that I'm saying that is I have significant experience in processes and procedures of the way that government operates. I come to these meetings, I come to planning commission meetings, I go to the recreation meetings, partially to hear what's going on in the community, partially to see how our government officials are dealing with what's going on in the community, but also I have a vested interest in how are things running and why do they run the way that they do. Doesn't matter whether it's here in Lower Paxton or any place, it's a passion of mine. So to put that into perspective, I am here this evening regarding a procedural issue that came up in March that I needed to step back and take a look at before I brought it to the board. I wanted to wait until the entire board was seated, because as you know, don't have to tell you, we've gone through some appointment processes, and I just think this is an important issue. For those that may not be aware, a quorum of the Board of Supervisors is 3 supervisors. So the minimum the board can meet with, as you guys know, is 3 supervisors in order to conduct business. At the beginning of March, the Board of Supervisors had 3 supervisors on it, so they did represent a quorum, so they met. At that particular meeting, a motion was put forward in which 2 supervisors agreed to the motion and 1 supervisor disagreed to the motion. The question was then posed to Solicitor Madden, who was not present at that meeting but was reachable by phone. What constitutes a majority vote when a quorum is present in the Board of Supervisors? The phone was put on speakerphone. The solicitor rendered her professional opinion that a majority of the quorum was what was needed in order to move the motion forward. So the board acted on that advice, moved the motion forward, and the meeting proceeded. Well, moved to the next week. The next week, there must have been some discussion midweek about this particular voting procedure, because the solicitor then opened the meeting by saying, while she stood behind her decision that a majority of a quorum represented enough votes to move a motion forward, she didn't want to put the township at risk to have to go through a legal proceeding that might cause expense and time and maybe even some hard feelings. So she recommended at that meeting that the prior week's motion be rescinded. 3 members were sitting on the board. There was a quorum present. Well, actually, there were 4 members, but because of what the motion was, 3 members were sitting on the board. There was a quorum present. Excuse me. And
Ms. Scheib, you're at 4.5 minutes, so please wrap
okay,
it up.
I'll make it soon. You want me to go
Thank
fast?
you.
I'll go faster. All 3 people voted to rescind the motion. However, Solicitor Madden qualified her "I stand behind my decision" with the "given the circumstances." Okay, given the circumstances, you cannot qualify a decision when you give the Board of Supervisors how to vote. So that piqued my curiosity because, like I said, I'm all about process and procedure. So I went and I did some research, and my question to Solicitor Madden this evening is, how many votes are required to move a motion forward when there's a quorum of supervisors sitting at this podium?
Respectfully, Ms. Scheib, I'm not going to litigate this issue from the dais. As the board stands currently, there are 5 members, which means you need 3 positive votes to move any decision forward as of this evening.
Okay, I find that insufficient. So here comes my request to the Board of Supervisors.
You've exceeded your 5 minutes, Ms. Scheib.
I'm not commenting anymore. I'm making a citizen request to the Board of Supervisors. In accordance with Article 11, Section, I think it's 2003, the board can request a written opinion from their solicitor regarding a legal issue.
We will
I
take that-
am,
We will
pardon me?
take that under advisement.
I
Thank you
am
very much for
requesting,
your recommendation.
and I would like to be informed then on what the board has decided, and when that issue is resolved, I would like to know how that's resolved. And I'll just give you a heads up, okay? I have the appellate court decision, and you're wrong, okay? So, it's right here in my pocket. if anybody needs to see it. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Shive.
Is there any other public comment? Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we will move forward with comments from the Board of Supervisors. Do we have any comments from the board?
I do. So last week, I attended the Heroes Grove, let me get my notes. We had the Heroes Grove Awards Night ceremony for the firefighters and the EMT employees. I didn't have an opportunity to express my feelings about the service, so I will do so tonight. I would like to say first how grateful I am that the people employed in these professions here in Lower Paxton Township have used their time, their talent, and their abilities to the benefit of the Lower Paxton Township residents. We are blessed to have such a quality public service department, and I want to simply express my appreciation for those individuals that work here in this particular field. Thank you very much.
Do we have other board comments? Hearing none, managers report.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have no official report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Gotcha. We'll move to the public hearing on the matter of the newly created Township Bureau of Fire. We will start with Public Safety Director Kashiba and Deputy Chief Fire Graham. Gentlemen?
Members of the board, our volunteers here, and guests, and those at home, thank you for having the opportunity to come here and give you a little bit of backstory on what is going on with your emergency services, particularly the Bureau of Fire and our cooperating fire companies here. So just a quick background on myself. I have 40 years in the fire service, 22 years of which are of a volunteer capacity as a fire chief. All those other years were firefighter and many other positions. I have 26 years in EMS and 32 years in law enforcement. I was fortunate enough to be chosen as your public safety director in March of 2018. Very immediately after that, it became apparent through some meetings and some issues that we needed to quickly address some of the things that were going on, operational guidelines and reporting issues and that sort of things, and get working together. With that said, the Board of Supervisors at that particular time expressed an interest to begin to prepare a township-wide set of standard operating guidelines, general orders, whatever word you choose to use for them. As we continued to work in that direction, it became immediately apparent to me that we needed an outside agency to give outside opinions as to what an organizational assessment needs to be for our emergency services. And I presented that through an RFP and was ultimately agreed upon through the board, and the Municipal Resources Incorporated, MRI, came in and conducted that study. And one of the key recommendations in the study very early on was for the township to hire a deputy chief of fire or oversee the operations side of the fire service on a day-to-day basis. We had put together a board of professionals from the area, from the fire service, and the selection process was gone through, and we, at that particular time, picked Deputy Chief Graham to be that individual, that change agent that we needed to prepare our township for what eventually will be a combination department. And I have to say, before turning it over to Deputy Graham, this man has worked tirelessly to get things done on the operations side, and has worked tirelessly with the individuals seated at these tables, the leaders of these organizations, Colonial Park, Paxtonia, and Lingelstown. And I think he continues to do a great job, and we've probably now see some of the best cooperation that has ever occurred in this township as a direct result of having an operational division chief overseeing these things. So with that, I'll pass the mic over to Deputy Chief Graham. He can fill you in on his tenure here and where we have been and where we are going.
Good evening, members of the board, residents of Lower Paxton Township, and our volunteers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight on this important topic. For those who do not know me, as the director said, my name is Brett Graham, and I have the honor of serving as the township's first deputy fire chief, a role I was appointed to in January of 2023. Since that time, the director and I have worked in close partnership with our 3 volunteer fire companies to implement the recommendations issued by the MRI study, which include unifying our collective mission, establishing shared operational policies, and setting performance benchmarks aligned with nationally recognized standards. In just a short 2.5 years, through strong collaboration, we have made tremendous progress and have addressed up to 70 of the 140 recommendations to include, but are not limited to, updating the township's fire service ordinance, entering into formal cooperation agreements with the 3 fire companies, issuing 17 general orders, including a standardized training program for both volunteer and career staff, ordering 3 standardized fire engines to ensure interoperability. We launched a progressive stipend staffing initiative. We've developed and implemented a township-wide duty officer program. We've consolidated 3 individual records management systems into one unified township platform. And perhaps most importantly, we've strengthened communication and transparency between the township and its dedicated fire companies. These milestones represent the foundation of something far greater than just policy or equipment. They reflect our shared commitment to public safety and our collective investment in a modern, unified fire service for Lower Paxton Township. Make no mistake, our volunteer firefighters are highly trained, deeply committed professionals who answer the call time and again, as they just did. Their service has been and continues to be nothing short of exceptional. However, we must recognize the realities of a growing community. Lower Paxton is a 28 square mile township with 55,000 residents, rising to over 80,000 during daylight hours. We're of urban density, and we contain critical infrastructure, including major interstate corridors. As our community grows, so too do the demands on emergency services. In just the past year alone, fire call volume increased by 16%, reaching nearly 1,900 incidents in 2024. Despite the success of our stipend program, offering up to $14,000 annually, we are still experiencing service gaps where fire stations and individual units are either delayed or out of service. Many of our volunteers balance full-time careers and personal responsibilities. They are committed, but they are stretched thin, and they are asking for help. The risk to the public is growing. The data is clear. The path forward is responsible, evidence-based, and rooted in partnership. The time has come where we must transition to a combination fire service model that blends full-time career staff with our dedicated volunteers to ensure that the community gets the level of service that they deserve. The creation of the Bureau of Fire represents the next chapter in that journey, a model that enhances coverage, supports our volunteers, and ensures that Lower Paxton Township continues to be a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. This is not about replacing our volunteers and their identities. It's about reinforcing them. It's about building resilience, and it's about preparing for the future together. So thank you all for your continued support and commitment to public safety.
I want to publicly commend Public Safety Director Kashiba and Deputy Fire Chief Graham for the work that they've done in conjunction with the fire companies. The 3 companies were invited here tonight because the MRI report says very clearly that the Board of Supervisors has a role to play, and that role is that we should actively engage cross-section of the fire companies and also the public. The reason for that active engagement is to establish goals, objectives, and a vision. You're here this evening so that you can tell us what you're feeling, what you're knowing. All the work that's gone on to this date has provided for you some level of feeling of where we're at and where we're going. And we want to hear from you. So what we'll do is, we will give each fire company, whatever representatives you choose, 5 to 10 minutes to speak. We'll start here with 35, we'll go to 34, and then finish up with 33 in a row, my right to left. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Harp.
Chief Hart, I need you to wait just a second. When we opened the budget process in November, we, as the Board of Supervisors, 5 of us, invited the public into our executive session during the budget presentations that each department made to the board during the budget process. We had Parks and Rec, we had Public Safety, we had Public Works, we had Public Safety. Under Public Safety, we had each individual firehouse come in and talk to the Board of Supervisors to make a presentation about what their hopes, their dreams, their needs were. We also, at that time, invited the public. The hearings that we had in executive session were public. We asked hard questions of you all. Robin Lindsay asked questions. Chris Judd asked questions. Paul Navarro asked questions. Norm Zumas asked questions. Me, being the junior supervisor, was learning the process, but I asked questions too. So we've made a commitment to having you all come in, talk to us, and do a public presentation. We passed the budget on December 17th, according to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Second-Class Township Code as per required. So I am not exactly sure what we're going to be able to accomplish tonight because we have a budget that we passed. We've heard from you all. We adjusted the budget that was presented to us based on what we heard because public safety is our #1 concern as supervisors. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Thompson, for that history lesson. I will tell you that the reason the fire companies are here is because in the next couple of months, certain decisions are going to have to be made. So let's just suggest in the next 6 months, a foundation is going to be laid for this combined fire service. And whatever we do over the next 6 months is going to set the foundation for the next year, the next 6 years, the next 60 years. I think you will at least concede that there are multiple new members of the board who would like very much to be educated like you had a chance to be educated. Would that be fair? So with that, I will ask Chief Harp to go ahead and start the presentation. 5 to 10 minutes. Tell us what you think. Tell us what whichever one of you wants to speak, or any other experts you have in the room.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Board, Supervisors. My name's Sean Harp. I'm the Chief of Inglestown Fire Company. I'm just going to be very brief because I know President DeSanto has some very good points that we want to talk about. But just a general idea of where I think we are as Inglestown Fire Company and part of the Bureau of Fire is obviously we still are 100% volunteer. The guys leave their homes. The guys and gals, they leave their homes. They staff the station when they're available to. But there's still room for improvement with the stipend program, we believe. I can't remember the actual numbers that we're looking at for the stipend coverage, but I know it's not where we would like to be. I think there's still some improvement there that we can really get some more word out, try to get those firemen that are firemen somewhere else that maybe want to come into Lower Paxton Township for a shift or two and provide a service here for that stipend. So I think some advertisements could be very well in line for that. And then generally we can support a plan when it's created, but to this point we're still not there. And that's probably what we're going to talk about tonight and moving forward is what that plan actually looks like and how it does support the volunteer system as the ordinance says. So the last thing that we want to see in the end is that we become a combination department and it happens in a way that the volunteers just say, you know what, we're done. That would put everybody in a bad spot, right? The public, you guys as the supervisors of the board, you'd be looking at a lot more money real quick. So again, in the end, I do believe that we can support what's going on once we know what that is, and we'll figure that out here. But I'm going to pass it over to President DeSanto because he does have some points that we want to speak about. So.
Thank you, Chief. President Nicholas DeSanto from Lingelstown Fire Company, again, thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. We've had a lot of conversations over the last 2 years, and a lot of progressive change has come into this fire service that I honestly didn't think was going to be a reality. And I would say that hitting on 70 of 140 recommendations is a significant accomplishment for as sophisticated and diverse of a departments as we are. And as Chief Graham said, these last couple of years, I think everybody at these tables will agree, we've worked, albeit not always agreeing, but we've worked pretty well together to come up with reasonable solutions to what are either real or perceived problems. Before the board here, there's a road, the proverbial road of 3 paths, right? We can continue on the path that we are with the all volunteers. We recognize that there are potential for gaps in those and that you're going to be relying upon one another to continue to fill those gaps. But as I look around the room, I look around our own organizations, and I ask myself, what's my own duration? There is a finite point to that, because the reality of the matter is we went from 400,000 volunteers in the mid-90s to about just under 40,000 as of last year in the Commonwealth. It's a falling rate that we can't plug any further. We're competing against our neighbors for the same people, and if we want to be putting firefighters and staff stations, the only choice that we're going to have is to supplement what we have right now, and that's the combination department that's been discussed and presented. And our organization stands firmly with what Chief Harp says. We believe it's got to come now soon, because I don't think anybody wants to give up the level of service that they have. But we want to do it in a way that the volunteers are truly being supplemented and not being replaced intentionally or accidentally. Either way, it's a bad thing, and it puts the taxpayers at a disadvantage, and it's going to put this board at a much more strenuous financial obligation if that were to happen. So I don't want to go into a ton of details, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions that are going to come around here. But at the end of the day, we're proud of our organization. We are super proud of our identity. We will continue to fight for our identity and our community. But we believe that we have a place that we can continue to support the township as a whole, to develop and grow the Bureau. But I think that one of the things that we really need to do is step back and look at how is this going to be rolled out. And I'm sure there's thoughts, there's conversations that we can dive into, but without diving much more into my 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we'll pass it off to Paxtonian.
Yeah, thanks.
You guys used 4 minutes and 37 seconds, so you did
nice.
well under the.
Nice. All right.
I just want to add one thing. Obviously, the MRI report was intended to do just that. That is, support the volunteer fire companies. I just want to interject this one thing. When I spoke to the folks at PSAS about volunteer fire company, the expert they have over there said to me, a volunteer fireman is worth $33 and some change an hour. And I disagreed with him. And my disagreement was that there's no amount of money that would adequately compensate our hero volunteer firefighters. Name me another job where you volunteer and it takes you away from your kid's birthday or your evening dinner, or you're waking in the middle of the night to go and do your volunteer work. And oh, by the way, while you're being a volunteer, you might die. There's no amount of money that could compensate fairly. So you folks are truly heroes, and we absolutely do want to support you. And that's the goal of what we're trying to reach with this investigation and these learning environment we're doing now. Thank you very much for your comments, and Chief Moore, we'll go to 34, Paxtonia.
I think Sean, I just have one more point, if it's all right.
I'm
Supervisor,
sorry. Go ahead.
just one more
You're
quick
well
point.
under your 10 minutes.
Good deal. First of all, thank you for those words. I'm sure everybody in this room is thankful for that, and we know that you guys are there to support us, so we do appreciate that. One thing that I just wanted to bring up, we have something that's a little different at Lingelstown. I know Paxtonia has some of this, Colonial Park has a little bit of it, but it's the home response aspect. So what home response is when volunteer firemen aren't at the station, but they're doing their normal life thing. Maybe they're mowing the lawn, maybe they're hanging out with the kids or playing with them in the yard, but they're available for a response. We started tracking that at the beginning of the year, and I just wanted to, just so you guys are aware, 2025 to date for Linglestown, we have 7,074 hours of home response availability, and that is people that are qualified to do the job. So while they're not captured in the stipend program, they're not captured in those statistics, they are available, ready to respond, and we do that. So I just wanted to point that point out too.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Paxtonia.
Hi, Larry Shapansky, president of the Paxton Fire Company. I just want to start this off with Linglestown mentioned the surge of drop in numbers of the volunteers. And at the end of this month, I'll been a volunteer firefighter for about 10 years now. And I could personally say the drop I've seen in just that 10-year mark, let alone what the actual number has been over the past how many decades. At this point in time, the volunteers do a great job of providing the service to the the residents through the fire companies. However, this is not a sustainable process forever. We've seen that in the data. As things continue to grow, as people continue to move on, there needs to be some kind of help to continue to give that service to the full degree. And we're never going to meet that 100%, obviously. It's almost an unattainable goal. But this is kind of the step forward into being able to meet that goal. I've seen it just in normal life. As the older generation starts to die out, there's nobody there to replace that generation. The same thing's happening with the volunteer fire service. Right now in the back of this room, you see all the volunteers that came out tonight. This is a good number. There is more that weren't able to make it. However, as that number continues through life and things change, people move out of the area, people sadly pass away through the time of life, who's there to step up to be that replacement? I'd like to tell you every day, 365 days a year, there's going to be a fire truck in front of your house when you call for it. However, the sad reality is we have the numbers of fire apparatus being out of service throughout the week. We have the numbers of firefighters not being able to staff the station. I have a full-time job at Lower Paxton. During the day, I'm here. I'm not at the firehouse. There are members that are at the firehouse that staff the firehouse, and then there's days where there is nobody available. And as a township, we accommodate that through the fire companies, and we try to make those numbers work. But again, there needs to be a breaking point where we get that help to be able to serve that. The career staff is a great move. It's going to supplement what we have, and it's going to keep it going. Our volunteers are here to do one job, and that's to continue to be firefighters. Just because you put somebody else there to help with the job, the volunteers aren't going to walk away from that. The people that want to be here to respond to those calls are going to be the people that continue to show up and respond to those calls at the end of the day. At the end of the day, this is kind of a coming forward movement. I've been here in Paxtonia for 2 years now, coming on 3 in August. There has been humongous strides to become a unified organization. When I first got here, compared to where I come from, the Hazleton area, things are a lot different from the coal region, as Chief Fogg knows. Things are a lot different back there, and things are a lot different here. And we've made huge strides to come into a united organization to be able to provide the best service to our public. And I think as long as we have your backing support, the volunteers of Paxtonia, although there are disagreements, and those are minor things that we overcome as a department, as discussion between the chiefs, we'll get through these things and we'll make these things work. Because at the end of the day, we're here for you. We're here for them behind us. We're here for the people. You know, we wouldn't exist if you guys didn't live here. If there was no residency, no employees, what would be the point of a fire station be to sit in the middle of a field somewhere, right? So we're here for you. We're here to make ourselves better as we go. And as volunteers, we're going to continue to do that. However, we're going to ask for the help to be able to do that. In order to continue doing our job and to continue getting these guys to keep going and doing their thing, there needs to be some backup to reinforce that. And that's pretty much all I had to bring tonight. I'll turn it over to Chief Moore.
I just have a very few statements. I echo what President Sapansky stated. In the last 15 years that I've been at Paxtonia, I got to see moving into where we didn't really get along with Colonial Park, we didn't get along with Linglestown, we were kind of all at each other. We still kind of are in fun games, but
Friendly competition is good.
But now I think in the last couple of years, this is the most that we've worked together since I've been here. We have people cross-staffing fire trucks. We have people riding other fire trucks, working together, training together more. I think going forward with the support of the township supervisors and the support of all our chiefs and stuff, having career staff on just to help us. There's days like Paxtonia lately, we've been hurting. We lost, I think we did some numbers, we lost probably close to 11 members in the last 2 years, just because of life. Like nothing major going on, just life. People having kids, people, new jobs, moving, stuff going on, and that hurts us. Our daylights, guys work, some guys work multiple jobs, including myself. So, but I think the career staff will greatly support us, and like President Stepanski, we're in support of it just because we know it's going to help.
Let me just say now that we are very proud of how the rough edges between the departments, between the different firehouses, have smoothed out. We really like that, and we appreciate all the efforts that you all have put in to help that come along.
Paxtonia, your comments are complete?
Just one more thing, and obviously there's friendly competition, but when it matters, when 911 is called and the alarms go off, the competition goes to the side and the service gets done. I just want that to be clear.
Exactly.
And our volunteers are always up to the professionalism, and Chief Graham pointed out the standards we follow, and that's how we will always be. That's how we'll continue to be. And with the help that you can provide to us, our volunteers will stay strong as they can be. So, thank you.
And we appreciate that.
All right, 5 minutes and 49 seconds. So you're the top number right now. Let's see what 33 has for us. Chief Fogg?
Chief Moore says I'm going to win. I made a prepared statement because I had a lot on my mind and I didn't want to miss anything because it's a very crucial topic. So I'm going to read a prepared statement, and then by all means during question and answer any specific questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. I can agree with Larry. The Cole region, and Brad would probably know a little bit about it, is quite different than the Harrisburg area. So my name is John Fogg, and I'm the fire chief of the Colonial Park Fire Company. I'm also a Lower Paxton Township resident residing at 6293 Staple Court. The fire service has been part of my life since I was a kid. I'm a second-generation volunteer firefighter serving since 1998. I love and admire the fire service culture so deeply that I was driven to pursue a career firefighting job in 2004 at the Army Depot in New Cumberland, where I am currently served as the rescue captain. I spent the better part of my life as a firefighter, a fire officer, and a fire instructor in both the career and volunteer fire service throughout the country and in some other countries as well. I don't often talk about my background and accomplishments, and only do so tonight to point out that my opinions don't come solely from a local view, but also a regional and national view of the fire service in its entirety. I believe tonight's topic to be important enough that I took off work to ensure I was here to speak about it. I've never been much into politics, but I understand and follow them closely because they have tremendous bearing on every facet of emergency services within my career and volunteer fire departments. We often hear the catchphrases like, "You can't put a price on public safety," but we do it every day because we have to, and it's exactly why we're sitting here tonight. Since I came to Lower Paxton in 2006, I've watched the ebbs and flows of all three fire companies in terms of volunteerism and active firefighting membership. While the membership numbers have ebbed and flowed for 20 years, they've also collectively trended downward as they have throughout the entire country. Several stopgap measures have been implemented throughout previous years to try and recruit, retain, incentivize, and encourage current volunteers to donate more time and to find new volunteers to come in through our doors. For example, in 2017, the Board of Supervisors adopted an ordinance allowing for an EIT and local property tax credit for active volunteers. This ordinance was a good start, but should be updated to allow for the highest credits allowed by state legislation for our volunteers. In 2019, Paxtonia Fire Company received a regional SAFER grant from the federal government for recruitment and retention to benefit all three fire companies. It allowed us to provide monetary incentives to volunteers for answering calls and to also produce recruitment websites and videos for recruitment. After the expiration of the SAFER grant, Colonial Park Fire Company started its own monetary incentive program encouraging members to spend time in the firehouse. In November of 2023, Lower Paxton Township implemented a stipend program allowing for up to 4 members at each firehouse and a township duty officer to sign up for incentivized shifts. All of these programs had one of the same goals. They are stopgap measures that are used throughout the country to slowly bridge the gap between a waning volunteer fire service, and the need for some amount of career staffing to form a combination fire department. The volunteers we have do a tremendous job at protecting the 12th largest municipality, its 56,000 residents, and all the additional visitors every day. The problem is we've hit a point in the system where volunteerism alone is not enough to guarantee fire protection. We're operating 3 volunteer fire companies without any safety net. For instance, if the available volunteers arbitrarily plan overlapping vacations, there becomes a gap in coverage that are unsafe and unfair to the citizens of Lower Paxton Township, including my own family. Like any resident of Lower Paxton, when I go to work for 48 hours at a time, I expect my family to be protected at home by the emergency services within Lower Paxton Township. Unfortunately, we can't guarantee that safety against fires 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for my family or for anyone else's, because we have unpredictable and intermittent gaps where these very minimal or no volunteers are available. In 2023, Lower Paxton Township received a report from MRI on the township fire services that the township paid roughly $50,000 to have evaluated. The report recommended the immediate hiring of full-time career firefighters for the township. Concurrent with that report, Colonial Park had voiced concerns about our own staffing abilities because the live-in program that used to have 12 to 15 firefighters living at the station had dwindled down to 2 or 3 firefighters after COVID. Currently, that program has 7 firefighters living at the station, but that doesn't mean there are always 7 firefighters available. They have families, jobs, schooling, and hobbies outside of the firehouse, as do all the other volunteer firefighters in the township. In 2024, we attended budget meetings along with other officers to speak in support of hiring a small contingent of full-time firefighters. While Deputy Chief Graham requested and budgeted for 10 firefighters, I would have advocated for 12 positions myself to guarantee 3 firefighters available on every 4-shift rotation and 4 shifts total. This would provide fire coverage even on days when volunteer numbers are dwindling or non-existent. At the end of the budget meetings, the 2025 fire tax millage was raised from .6365 mils to 1.24 mils with the intent of hiring 10 full-time firefighters. The township then posted a job announcement and recruited applicants while charging them a fee to apply, only now to debate if we should hire firefighters. The township is now currently spending an additional $30,000 to determine if we should pay for firefighters and how much we should pay them if we hire them. I'm happy to spend tonight or any other time educating the public and the Board of Supervisors on our fire department statistics, the nationally recognized response standards, or our own successes and deficiencies for our departments. In fact, I'd encourage the public and the board to learn as much as they can about the fire department and their operations. Their lives all depend on it as well. Since I've been at Colonial Park, Lower Paxton Township has had 4 fatal building fires, killing 5 residents. This does not include the fatal fire last month that was 2 non-fire related deaths. The first one of the fatal fires listed was in February of 2016. Prior to that fire, it had been more than 20 years since a house fire killed someone in Lower Paxton Township. The chance of a house fire happening tonight or any other night is still 50-50. It either happens or it doesn't. There's no statistical analysis, probability chart, or fancy equation that can predict or prevent fires from occurring. The only thing we can do is properly staff, train, and respond immediately when we are dispatched to a given resident and give them the best chance of survival during their emergency. The bottom line is very simple. The Lower Paxton Township volunteers are very, very good at what we do. We're working together, coordinating, and planning better than we ever have in the last 20 years. Most of that is in part to hiring of a deputy chief that encourages and forces what should have been happening all along. This planning has also brought to light significant gaps where enough volunteers are not available to keep fire apparatus in service at all 3 firehouses. The only way to guarantee fire protection is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is to hire career firefighters and shift into a combination fire department, one that is primarily staffed by volunteers so long as they exist, but backed up and supported by career staffing to fill the inevitable gaps in the schedule. A relatively small contingent of 12 firefighters, compared to the roughly 60 police officers, would bring guaranteed fire protection to Lower Paxton Township and offer much-needed reprieve to the volunteers who lose sleep trying to ensure there's always someone available as best as possible to protect this township and its residents. I appreciate the board's time tonight dedicated to the fire service of the township and hope after tonight we can move forward with the hiring of the much-needed positions. Thank you.
Good evening, Board of Supervisors, fellow fire service members, and members of the public that are with us this evening. My name is Stephen Michelone. I serve as the president of the Colonial Park Fire Company, and I live at 4521 Fritchie Street here in the township. I hail from the city of Altoona and moved here 10 years ago to take a position with the state when it was offered to me. Prior to that, when I was at the city of Altoona, I served as their assistant fire chief with a platoon of 17 members and a total staff of 70 as our complement. That city sort of mirrors what we have here within your township, although it's half the size physically, almost the same population and slightly smaller. But with those kind of statistics as to what staffs that fire service is 4 stations every day. In 1895, those who were in the leadership positions of that city realized that although they had 9 volunteer fire stations, they needed a career service in order to be able to provide the services which were required in a densely populated area. That population density is getting close to what you have here in this township as well. And with it comes all the challenges of fire and public safety that we're discussing this evening. Chief Fogg so eloquently gave you a great listing of what the concerns are, where we stand today, and where we probably should be going. I echo his sentiments and fully support the direction in which this is going. And our membership as a whole has done so as well through a unanimous vote when it came up to the membership at previous meetings. I want you to know that our firefighters do not wait for calls to happen. There are things that go on day in and day out that are outside of our response capabilities or outside of what our realm of response is. That happens to be public safety education that occurs routinely. That's maintenance of our equipment. That's maintenance of our stations. That's recruitment activities to try to bring others into our ranks, and mentoring of young firefighters or inexperienced firefighters as they join our ranks. These are expectations that would remain of those that would come into the fire service, that are those that you hopefully will be hiring in the future. We respectfully request that you sincerely take the recommendations that have been brought before you from your staff and from my fellow leadership of the fire company seriously, and give us the help that we so desperately need in these days ahead. Thank you.
10 minutes and 10 seconds. You guys are good. Chief Fogg, you said many things in your prepared remarks, and importantly, you called out 2 things that we're proud of and we're working on. One, you said about getting educated, and that's what this is about. Current makeup of the Board of Supervisors needs to be educated. We need to understand. As I said, our responsibility, according to the MRI report, is to set objectives, goals, and a vision, and that's what we want to do. The other thing you brought up was the fact of hiring a consultant to figure out how to pay and compensate these full-time firefighters. I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it until I think the question is satisfied. What we do here now, over the next couple of months, maybe next month, I don't know, but when the Board of Supervisors, because I'd like to see us have a public meeting as well, but once the Board of Supervisors has the answers that they need, then maybe we can move forward, and hopefully that'll be in positive direction. But we don't know what we don't know, and former Defense Secretary Rumsfeld famously said, you know, there's a lot of things, there are known knowns, the unknown knowns, and then I won't get into the whole thing, but that's the purpose for our exercise here tonight. I want to thank you for your testimony, for your thoughts. Members of the board, we have questions?
Can I start?
I don't want to monopolize the time, but I've got several questions.
Yes.
I want my fellow colleagues to get a chance first.
Thank you. So in reading the MRI report, I feel like it was predicated upon a statement that says, as with most fully volunteer fire departments, the availability of volunteer personnel for weekday daytime response is extremely limited, a situation that is not going to improve for the foreseeable future. Can you elaborate on the specific times where there is a lack of coverage?
I'll speak for Colonial Park. It is unpredictable, more so probably for us than the other departments, because fortunately or unfortunately, a majority of our members that are active firefighters are career firefighters somewhere else. So they might be home for 3 days in a row and then working for 1 or 2 days in a row, which goes against the norm for volunteer firefighters in most reports, like MRI's report, where daylight is traditionally the worst time simply because most people work a first shift job and then they're home in the evening. So we're kind of a unique circumstance where a majority of our people are probably on shift work, which means they're gone for 24, 48 hours and then maybe home for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. The problem for us becomes everybody's on different schedules, and when they all align, when all the stars unfortunately align, we go from having 5 or 6 people around one day to having 0 around the next day. And that's very hard to predict just because it has to do with guys picking up an overtime shift, somebody being held at work, somebody getting home late from work, and just very unpredictable in terms of the shortage area, where most fire departments can say we're better at night than we are during the day. That's not our case at all.
I know from Paxtonia's standpoint, it's also fairly variable throughout the days. Our daylights are generally the worst. I will say Paxtonia has a uniqueness. We have a fairly good live-in program. Fogg touched on his portion of it. We have approximately 6 or 7 members a part of that program as well, myself included. Nights are usually our better time. I would say at Paxtonia, a majority of the time, we have a crew in the firehouse. We have plenty of young firefighters who are there to volunteer their time and respond on the incident. A lot of our problems come with who drives them there. That's a very prestigious position that's a fairly expensive piece of apparatus that sits out in your parking lot currently. We want the appropriate people behind that and the appropriately trained people that are able to get it from point A to point B and appropriately operate it. So in bringing that staff upon us, we fill those gaps of our volunteers are here. They need somebody to supplement them to possibly just easily get them there. But the daylight's probably, I think everyone can agree, that's usually the worst time just due to the amount of people working.
Yeah, speaking for Linglestown, daylight does tend to be where we're the lightest. We can usually pull off at least one cross-staff crew. And for those who don't know what a cross-staff crew is, it's people that are qualified on more than one piece of apparatus. So if either one gets dispatched, it can respond. But yeah, I agree with these guys. Daytime probably is our toughest. Maybe 6 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. Okay. But there's I would say out of the 3 companies, I don't know that we're out of service as much, just because we do have a bigger group of people. But it still is definitely something to talk about throughout the township.
Thank you. So there are a number of municipalities that just hire drivers. Is there a rationale for the 5 to 10 number? Why we settled on 10? I know, John, you mentioned 12. What's the rationale for that specific number 10?
Sure. Supervisor, if I could circle back to the days of the week as well.
Yep.
When we looked at, so when the MRI study originally came out, it does state in the MRI study that we should hire contingent Monday to Friday daylight through data extrapolation through our records management systems, which I'll touch on it real quick because Supervisor McCormick and I have talked about this on numerous occasions. Prior to January of this year, the 3 fire companies each had separate records management systems. So essentially, if we responded to a call in the township, it would be documented 3 separate times. The first year and a half, or first 2 years that I was here, 2023, 24, I spent a great deal of my time dissecting that data to break it down so that we had credible data that spoke to our true number and our true data sets, which was difficult. It had, between running the numbers in all 3 systems to running the county CAD numbers and then breaking that down so that we weren't so essentially, I didn't want to count one call as 3 calls because that inflates numbers. So any numbers, any reports previously that you would have seen coming out of my office is true credible data because I took the time to break that down to give us true data to work off of. Starting January of this year, we've migrated from those 3 independent systems to one township-wide records management system that essentially frees up a lot of time for me when I have to run reports at the end of the month. And then I can make those pretty reports that you see come across your desk.
Yeah.
So with that said, that data showed us that this was not a Monday to Friday problem. This was a 7 days a week issue that we needed to address. When you look at the the spray charts, while there are days that are busier than others, it's genuinely pretty even across the board. And when we look at where our performance gaps are, those are also fairly even across the board, Sunday through Sunday. As far as time of the day goes, that also has variances in it. And collectively, our busiest times, when you look at the shifts where we're running the most calls, it's 6A to 6P. That is where our request came from for the 10 firefighters. Again, I can get on board with what Chief Fogg said about 24-hour staffing. However, when the director and I talked about it, and we talked about it with the leadership of the fire companies, our plan was to introduce career staffing in a way that was not only fiscally responsible, but addressed our biggest concern up front, and that is where the daytime staffing came from.
Okay. Do you think that hiring career staff would help us enhance our fire prevention or code enforcement efforts?
I think that's entirely up to the board. I think it should. I can tell you that for instance, we had a connection missing for the fire department on a building several years ago, and it took me all of 3 years to figure out how to get that force to be replaced. It's routine that you walk into businesses and there's code infractions that, although minor, when you compound them with a bunch leading up to a fire and then an occupied building, it leads to a problem. I think we're very lax on code enforcement. I don't think we have the staff to do it. I don't think you can rely on Deputy Chief Graham to do it. It's too big of a township, and he's already pulling his hair out dealing with us. So I think if you hired, a staff of firefighters, you could essentially make that job description to also include some sort of at least informal building walkthroughs to document stuff and say, hey, this needs fixed. And that could be part of their jobs for their routine day-to-day activities, which is what President Michaelone said as well. So I think that's a very real possibility. Lower Allen does something similar with their staffing program or their career program.
Okay.
Yeah, I gotta agree. If we're putting the firemen in the position, obviously calls don't happen 24/7. Like, there is downtime, and that downtime can be used to lead to the goal of preventing an emergency from occurring. Codes enforcement is a big deal. I can't tell you how many fire alarms we've been to where we can't even access the building because the little black box that's meant to house the keys to access that building is just empty.
Yeah.
Nobody's there to enforce, you need to put keys in here. And that's just the simple task of, now we're delayed of entering that building, whether or not there is an emergency. So I think that's something that should majorly be looked at in enforcing those things to, obviously we're never gonna 100% prevent an emergency from occurring, but it'll definitely be helpful, and definitely it's a little life safety initiative that should be taken into consideration.
I think, you're going to put career staff in place. It's a good opportunity for interaction with the community, and part of that's education. I would use the term more education than enforcement in that manner, because the more you can educate, the more you can cooperate, they're going to be willing to work with you as opposed to stepping out. And there's times when you need to do enforcement, clearly. But as all these gentlemen said, we've all run into situations where it's as simple as a Knox box key is not even put in. How can that be, right? Hydrants being updated and mapped, working with our water supply around here. It's like pulling, as everybody at this table's found out, it's like pulling teeth when we're paying $277,000 a year to make sure that their hydrants work, and we're getting on fires going, nope, doesn't work again. Ask for another tanker, so enforcement, education, yes, it's an opportunity to create a better, safer environment. I just think that this is an opportunity to create a good working environment and not a negative connotation in it. But there is an issue that in this township where we need to be getting ahead of some of the buildings that are out there also that are very problematic for emergency services all across the board, not just fire. So it would be a good opportunity to use that and leverage those people.
Thank you. And one more question.
Can I jump in real quick? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would agree. Specifically with President DeSanto, I think that it's all in how we we approach it. One of the biggest things in the fire service is a prevention, so community risk reduction. So not only are we reactive, we're proactive, and it would be the intent that any staff that we would hire would be expected to not only get out and know the first due area, their response districts, the buildings contained within, but to gather information, get to know those buildings, create relationships with those building owners or the apartment buildings, things like that. And part of doing that is getting in those buildings, understanding their physical features, things like that, and you start to find deficiencies. And to President DeSantos, we right now have a very limited enforcement ability because of the level of the International Fire Code that's been adopted here in the township, and that is something that is a conversation for a different day and that we need to have. However, I do think that the starting point for all of that is an education piece. How can we help the property owner protect their investment, right? So if we can have a conversation with them and correct the issue, or maybe they didn't even realize it was an issue, and we talk to them about where they're placing their garbage that may be blocking a fire exit, or replacing smoke detectors, or replacing a missing fire department connection, what have you, that helps us help them. So I do think that there is a piece of that we're missing now, because we're already asking these individuals to do so much, and they're doing some of this, but there's some of it that's just out of their reach. When I first got here, we had an issue with one of our hotels, and through reports from those guys looking at trends in our incident report, and we were able to see, wow, we were at this occupancy, I think at one point like 10 times in a week, and I may be exaggerating a little bit, but it was a lot. So we went out there and we had a conversation with them, and we figured out that it was an alarm system maintenance issue. It was a systems issue with how their personnel were reacting when there was an alarm. We were able to work through that problem with them. They hired a contractor to come in and correct the issues. We had to give them essentially there's some latitude in the code that allows some different systems or procedures within the occupancy. The way their building was designed was just problematic, and we worked through that challenge with them, and our call volume there has dropped. I think we've maybe gone there 2 or 3 times since, and that's over the last year. So we fixed that problem. I think we will see a lot more of that, if we have staff that can be out and looking into these things. So good question.
Got it. Thank you. So we need to balance the needs of our residents, public safety, as well as being fiscally responsible. Can we leverage the federal SAFER grants to fund career staff and/or support volunteer firefighters or recruitment?
So that's an absolute possibility, but there has to be a commitment from the board, and that's why we have not gone down that road just yet, because if we put in for the SAFER grant and we get it, a lot of times there's matching, and we have to be ready to pull the trigger when that time comes.
Okay.
I would like to ask, and this may not be fair, but the word education has come up consistently in the last half hour. Have we ever done any education of our businesses and our hotels in the area in terms of the safety issues that you all address when you go into these properties?
So I would say I can't speak to what has occurred before I was here
Right.
the last 2.5 years. When the opportunity arises, I think we absolutely do have those education. We take, it's a opportunity, an instance of opportunity. I think, our folks do take the time to explain those sorts of things, and we try to get them to do the right thing. And most of the time, they're willing to spend the money to fix things when they know about it. The problem really boils down to time. It'd be a full-time job in itself just to touch base with those individuals and every business in the township. When we see things that are glaring, we generally do some sort of a media push, or we'll talk to one of our local media outlets, or we'll push something on a social media platform to kind of bring attention to those things. But as far as some sort of a formal training, I don't know that any of that has been done.
Do municipalities ever hold workshops for their businesses in terms of these issues to get everybody in a room at the same time and do an education, do a training regarding the safety issues that need to be addressed in terms of preventative?
So I think most of the time that's just kind of handled through codes and compliance. But again, we don't have the staffing currently to address those on a regular basis.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as the education piece of that goes, not talking about building codes and such, just for clarity, the education that does happen currently, and I can speak for Lingelstown, I know the Colonial Park and Paxtonia do it as well, but if someone reaches out to us, like we have a couple schools in our first due, they'll reach out ahead of time and say, hey, we're doing Public Safety Day or it's Fire Prevention Week. Can you guys come out and do a presentation? We'll take a fire truck out, give the kids some fun things and just do the very basic stuff of, like the stop, drop, and roll, go out to your meeting spot, all the things to try to keep you safe in your home. And then we also do some things if like daycares reach out to us or things like that where they need to do an annual, safety drill. They'll either come to our firehouse or we can go out to them and show them how to use an extinguisher or show them the proper way to evacuate, just things like that. So that's about as deep as we get into it. We do have a couple guys at Lingelstown that do just that, mostly just that. They plan that all out. It's our fire prevention guys. Maybe a little different than what you were looking for, Supervisor Thompson, but just so you know that's happening in the background.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of echo what they're saying. Our situation is very similar. We have one of our members who's dedicated to public education. I think last year she had encounters with over 4,600 of the residents and students within the township. Trying to remember the exact numbers, but it was over 100 different events which were attended by our members for public education. But they are by request. As far as like a life safety 101 type of seminar like you're sort of proposing, we've not done something like that in the past. Not to say that something like that would not be of value. It might be of great value. In my current position, that's exactly what we do for our personal care facilities, is on a regular basis, is a review of what life safety requirements are out there that they have to meet on a regular basis, because unfortunately, they don't know. And it's hard to try to penalize people for what they don't know. You try to educate them instead.
Yeah, just to echo all that, education is a daily kind of part of this job. Like, we're always going out there making sure everyone's aware of things. It's usually on the family residential side of things, dealing with the children, dealing with the parents. But even like when we go out to get a meal for the guys, or we always have the fire truck with us to be able to respond to incidents while still kind of going about everyday life. There's people that just ask questions to the firefighters, like why are things done this way? Why is this like this? And you'd be surprised the amount of people that may just come right up to you and want that education without having to kind of grip it out into some workshop formal way. So.
All right, thank you.
I would like to talk about stipends. I believe we had an announced stipend program in Lower Paxton Township for about 6 months before we decided we needed career staff. Do you know, Deputy Fire Chief Graham, was the request for career firefighters based on a lack of participation in the stipend program?
I'm not sure I'm following. You said that we had a stipend program?
We announced our stipend program, and we had it in place for about 6 months. And then the Board of Supervisors got a request for the 10 career firefighters.
So the request that came at the budget, during the budget process in 2024 was as a result of the data that came of the stipend program. So essentially, if you look at the mapping or the trending charts, we started really high because it was something new. And then so it started in November of 2023. When we got to the January, February, March timeframe, we kind of plateaued off. And that continued, those numbers kind of trended in that same area till the July, August timeframe, which is when we started talking, that's when the budget season really kind of opens up and moves forward, knowing that going into the following year, 2024, we would have to, or I'm sorry, into 2025, if we were going to address that plateau, we would need to start having those conversations. So yes, that's where that came from. So between the data that was showing from the stipend program and the collaborative conversations that we were having with the volunteers, that's where that request came from.
Thank you. Chief Falk, specific question for you, since I read a post that you made on Facebook about fire service. And by the way, it was very, very informative, and a lot of people, I think, learned a lot about it. So thank you for doing that. But one of the things you mentioned in there was it would be possible to have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year coverage, primarily, I'm assuming you're talking about one fire engine response, but I don't know. But you said with the stipend program, and we could achieve full coverage for about $1.3 million worth of stipend annually. Can you tell me, is that not a workable plan, or is that a plan that's not feasible because of these lack of volunteers? Or I know there are some restrictions with how much money people can accept in that program. I get that. But your very bold statement that we could have that kind of coverage with stipend truly interests me. Can you describe how you developed that and whether or not it's a workable plan or not?
Sure. That number was based on 4 slots at each firehouse, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So essentially 12 firefighters around the clock, volunteers that are filling those slots. But exactly what you said is the problem. We don't have the people, and the people we do have are maxing out the program. So there's no feasible way to physically fill those slots. Theoretically, on paper, we could staff the entire township for $1.2 million if we had the volunteers to fill all those slots and if they were available. But traditionally, that's not been the case, and the numbers show that with what we've been able to fill on a daily basis.
This Board of Supervisors had a Teams meeting. That's an online electronic, video conference meeting with Upper and Lower Marion Township. And they took a very different approach to how they implemented career firefighters, but the Upper Marion representative mentioned their stipend participation for the last 3 months prior to our conversation with them. And they said that their stipend program participation was 92%, 96%, 97%. Now, I should caveat that by saying I think they were talking about a single station, not 3 stations, but a single station. Currently, our stipend participation runs, Chief Graham, you can help me out, but I think it's about 48%. 45%. Now here's the question that's rattling around in my head, and that's for each of you guys to help me understand. It may just be there's not enough people. I get that. That may be the simple answer. But what I don't understand is how Upper Marion Township can have 97% participation in stipends, and we can't get to that same level. So please help the Board of Supervisors understand that.
So I believe one of the things, at least I know in our firehouse, is guys looked at the stipend. Some of the guys that accept the stipend, they use it as extra money, but some of the guys can't take away the time from their full-time jobs or their life or during the week or daycare or stuff like that. They can't get away from it for when you break it down, I believe it's like $10 roughly, give or take, like an hour per person, and those guys can't, it's not like a thing for them, so they usually just try to avoid it. We still get them as volunteers, but they don't go on our stipend data. So we might have some more guys during the daytime that are around, but we don't have them on the stipend data because they don't want to collect it. So our numbers might show that we're having some less, which we are. I think Paxtonia has the same group of guys. I think we got about 10 guys or so. Same guys, stipend program. We either fill the shifts during the daytime or the live-ins with Lieutenant Spansky kind of running the helm at nighttime, making sure stuff's filled. They go on it then, but I just don't think the people we don't have the people, and and those people sometimes don't have the time just because of family life and other commitments. I mean, everything's more expensive these days, so a lot of people are working 1, 2, 3 jobs, and the stipend program just kind of goes to the side. But I mean, they still volunteer their time when they can. But I think that's our problem.
One of the I'm not very well versed in what their program is or how they block their time slot. But with our program, we are locking in and committing to 4 hours. So we may have a lot of times we might have people in there for 2, 2.5, 3 hours, and Chief Hart's pulling it up here for me. But we implemented time clocks into all these stations. Was it last year? I guess last year, maybe almost 2 years. I don't know. I'm losing track of time. But we have thousands of station staffing hours that aren't logged into the stipend program because we're not committing for that full 4-hour block. For example, we have guys back right now. We have 3 people on the stipend crew, but I have, I think, 7 or 8 people still back for other apparatus at our station. But they're not going to be tracked on that number, but they're captured in our U-attend time clock numbers that would show they were there and physically present. So, and one of the benefits that we have seen out of the stipend program is, hey, I got 3 guys that are on there. Well, I might get 2 more that just come down for 2 hours. So the stipend program is a plus to this, and does have an ancillary benefit of getting people in the door for staffing the firehouse. But it's not always reflected that we have 4 or 5, and I would say that is I don't use the term problem, but it's a big misleading statistic, especially in Lingelstown, where we have guys that drop in for 2 hours in between kids and family sports, and they hang out with I do it all the time with my kids, in between basketball practice, I'm down there for an hour with them or whatever, but it doesn't get captured as a staffing stipend program, even though we are in the firehouse staffing it for that 45 minutes, hour, 2 hours, whatever that time may be. Hopefully that, but without knowing how they did their block. But one of the recommendations is, we could look at that, is a 4-hour block maybe too much? Should we look at, lowering that down to a 3 or 2 or something like that, to continue to incentivize, hey, I still have it for especially the daytime period, but it's an option we can look at. I don't think anybody here is prepared to speak intelligently, though, on what that may look like.
Can we make the stipend program more flexible than I think you're saying? And maybe a 4-hour block could be shared by 2 people, so each person does 2 hours? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Something like that. Right now, we do have that where, if I pick up for 2 hours and Sean comes for the last 2 hours, we just split it. But what I'm saying is if there's only 3 of us that can cover for 2 hours, that would still pick up 2 hours. We don't have to peel off a dedicated 4-hour block, but you might start picking up 2 in Lingelstown, 2 in Paxtonia, 2 in Colonial Park, and they might be sequential, they might be overlapping. I don't know, but it might help continue that incentive to get. I can sit at home and watch TV and sports, or I can come down to the firehouse and watch it for 2 hours and be on a fire call. What's the better one, So I think the more we create some flexibility with parameters and controls into place so that we don't have abuse of that system, is worth continuing to investigate to try to help encourage.
Gentlemen, is it true that if 3 people sign up for a stipend and one of them doesn't show up, because you need a crew of 3, at least 3 to move a truck, right? Piece of fire apparatus. If 3 people sign up for the stipend, but one of them doesn't show up, do the other 2 still get paid? Okay. And the reason they don't get paid is because even though there's a commitment there, so maybe is it possible, let me ask the question this way, is it possible that some non-participation in the stipend program is people that thought they were going to get money, they showed up, because there wasn't a crew of 3, they didn't get paid? Do you understand my question? Is that a possibility why some of our participation is lower?
I would say it's a possibility. We try to stay ahead of it. So we do have a stipend coordinator in each station, appointed by Chief Graham, that takes care of that stipend and goes ahead of time to make sure that we have the slots filled. Matter of fact, when we were sitting in this meeting today, our coordinator is sending out messages right now saying, hey, there's an open slot on this day, who wants it? So we try to stay ahead of that for sure. Hopefully that answers from us.
And I need to commend Chief Graham, because I know on a daily basis he's looking at where people are and where people aren't. He's trying to cross level and move people around, and I know he's doing a great job at that. That's not my question. My question is, are there artificial impediments to the stipend program? If we could make those artificial impediments go away, and I don't know what they might be, and there may not be any. All I'm looking for is Upper Marion's got a 97% participation rate, and we've got 48. And it seems to me the people in this room are at least as smart as the people in Upper Marion Township.
Another just point I have, I think that to speak to the Chief Fogg's thing is the people aren't really there, right? Because the ones that are doing it are doing it. There's still some more that don't participate as much, and we try to get those people to do that. I think there's still a big opportunity to pull in some people from outside, whether it's through advertisements or we send a letter to every fire station within a so many mile radius to say, hey, if you're off this day and
How
you
can
want to
we
make
do
40
that,
bucks,
Chief? How can we do that? Can we pay somebody a stipend to do that program? To contact the fire companies and look and far and
So
wide,
we've,
90, 100 miles away, and try to recruit
we at
people.
Linglestown have used an outside firm for our mailer. Is it municipal? I forget what it's called, but they take care of mailing things out to all of our residents for our annual fund drive. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's something they could do, but I'm sure there's firms out there that could pinpoint spots to send things to, It's,
I think Supervisor Kurtz was asking a question about a driver, and I'd like to turn that around just a little bit. If the township provided a driver at 3, because not everyone's qualified as a driver, is that correct?
correct. Some stations have more than others, but
Okay, but the inability of a truck to move, some percentage of the time is because you don't have a driver. Is that a correct statement?
for us, not usually, but yes, for some of the other stations, absolutely.
So I guess the question I'm trying to drill down to is if the township figured out how to put a driver at the 3 firehouses, or one as Upper Marion staffing just a single firehouse. If we had a way of putting a driver there, you knew that the truck would be able to move. We knew the fire apparatus was going to be able to move because we had would we then get a greater participation in the stipend program for other people to be there because they know they're going to get paid and they know if there's a fire call, the truck is going to move? Is that a worthwhile something for us to investigate?
I mean, Chief, do you want to start first, or?
Supervisor McCormick, I think we're on the same page. Just to address the Upper Marion thing. So Upper Marion does only stipend one station. One station has volunteer stipend in it, and one station has 24/7 career staff in it. So they have 2 units in service all the time. And they're protecting 16 square miles with 33,000 people. So the one station stipend in Lower Paxton Township doesn't work because of time distance standards. As we had kind of talked about previously, we originally had talked about only stipending 2 stations because we knew that the likelihood of really being able to fill out the 3-station stipend wasn't wholeheartedly realistic, and that's where the 75% goal or benchmark came from. However, in working with the volunteers, it was expressed that it would not be fair if we only put a stipend in 2 of the 3 fire stations. So that's how we landed where we were. Now, to build onto that, the intent with the career staff day side is to have 5. The 10 breaks down, and I think I failed to answer this earlier, sorry, is that there would be 5 on duty at any given time. So 2 shifts of 5, with 2 being able to be on leave at any one point in time without creating overtime. So that gives us 3 people at a minimum working. Now, the way they would be deployed is if we have 2 volunteers in each station per se, 1 can be placed at each station to drive the fire truck if they're missing a driver. However, if we don't have any volunteers available that day, then they would be strategically placed in the township on a fire truck together so that we meet our minimum manning of 3 personnel. So there is some flexibility in the thought process there. And kind of that magic number of 3 is that if we don't have anybody at all, then we can put them together and we have at least 1 rig in the township, which is subpar. However, it's something. It's more than what we could potentially have if we don't have anybody. If we have, there are often times where we may only have 1 person in a fire station. We can take and put 2 people there. Now we have a crew of 3, and maybe we have a driver in another fire station. Or if all 5 are working, 3 can be in a station. We could put 1 and 1 in another. There's a lot of flexibility. This really is a moving target as far as where our staffing gaps are. There are days when we have a fire station out of service. There's days where there may only be 2 people in a fire station, that sort of thing. And we are, like you said, we actively move people around. I can't take all the credit for it because these guys, especially a lot of the guys that are around during the day, do a great job of communicating and talking back and forth. They don't need me to be the middleman. And we make things happen. There are some days, there are a lot of days, that it's more difficult than others, but we make it happen. This number that we're talking about as far as 10 career staff goes really is kind of a bare minimum number to do exactly kind of what you were just describing. So I think we're connected here. We're kind of on the same path, which I think is...
That's a scary thought. Our
scary.
brains are connected. Yeah, that's scary. Gentlemen, getting back to my question though is, are there artificial impediments to the stipend program working? Have we put stumbling blocks that stop firefighters from signing up for stipends? Do we have training requirements, or we have dress requirements, or we have minimum time requirements? Do we have anything that's stopping people from participating? Because the stipend program, I think, as Chief Fogg mentioned earlier in his post, if we maximize that, we have the greatest potential of meeting the public's needs at potentially the lowest cost. So we're interested in figuring that out. Gentlemen, anything?
Yeah, I could speak to just one point on that. There are training requirements that we have, fairly new training requirements that I won't say we didn't have before, but they were different. The latest training requirements are, agreed upon in the township by the training committee, and then brought to public safety and with discussion and with everybody there. I think there could be a piece of that might be holding us back with getting guys to where they need to be, or getting guys recognized, I should say, for their capabilities, because we do currently require pieces of paper for most of these certificates, most of these classes, to say you went to the class and you passed it. What we've been asking for, and we've got a little bit of it with the training committee, is what we call JPRs. So it's certain things that you need to be able to demonstrate you can do properly to say, yes, you have that certification, even though you didn't go take a piece of paper and a written test. So there is a big piece of that I think we could probably get guys recognized quicker, rather than waiting for the class availabilities, waiting to go online. Like right now, we're waiting on some things from the state because they can't, correct me if I'm wrong, they can't issue any certificates right now because of something going on. So there's people waiting on certificates. We've had officers at Leonstown that have many, many, many years of experience as officers that throughout their tenure, those classes were never a thing, or they weren't required, and you learned it on the job. To a point that we had an officer of 26 years step away because the amount of classes he would have to take to get caught up to get those pieces of paper to prove that he can do what he says he can do wasn't feasible. So, there's credibility to certificates and training and classes. I don't want to take that away from anything. But I think there also needs to be that secondary look at it to say, yes, you've proved to me you do these skills, you are good to go for this requirement, right? So, we've had people go through state training and get the certificates and then not be able to perform them. So
Let me ask you
know,
this question, Chief. I spent 24 years in the military. In the military, if you had a guy that was in a related field and he was doing a job, but you needed somebody in this other field, and maybe it was small engines and maybe a lot of similar pieces, his supervising shop foreman could test him. I don't care if you call it on-the-job training or whatever name you give it. His supervisor could test him, and at some point in time, give him a piece of paper that said, yes, he's done this, he's done this, he's done this, and he doesn't have the piece of paper from the advanced individual training that gives him that specific MOS, but his supervisor says, yeah, he can do all the tasks that are necessary. Can we implement something like that that'll give the chief at a station an opportunity to qualify somebody for a stipend that may not qualify now?
I do think we can. I think that's definitely a possibility, working with the training committee to come up with what those JPRs would be for said certificates. So that way we don't delay them getting to that level and being able to take part in the stipend. I believe what it is now, you have to, have your interior certification, and then you have so long to get firefighter 1 to continue doing the stipend. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, it might be engine certification, but regardless, there is a requirement there to go take a class, a state class, right? So things that probably can be done in-house, that were previously done in-house, right, over many years. I know it's a different day and age, things move faster, fires grow quicker. We can't deny that fact. So again, I'm not dismissing the certificates, but I think we have to have that other way of qualifying our people.
Chief Fogg, I'd like to come back to you. Oh, do you have something to add to that?
Mr. McCormick, if I could, just for a moment. I just want to reflect back on some things as it relates to training and levels of certification. And I'll probably misspeak on some of the years, but in the 50s and 60s in law enforcement, we did the very thing that we talked about just a second ago. We brought somebody on board, said, hey, you look like you'd be a good cop, let's put you on the street. This is how you write a traffic citation, and they were put to work. Did it work then? Sure, it worked then. Right now, there's bare minimum standards for police, EMS, paramedics, EMTs, firefighters. Part of the reason for that, though there are many, is there is vicarious liability on the township's behalf. If we put people who do not represent a standard level of training, they have met a standard and tested through that. To the chief's point, there are people that can make it through a program and still not meet our benchmarks, and that's understandable. But we are far beyond, as a service, any emergency service, to allow someone to get on fire apparatus, stretch hose lines, go into buildings without those benchmarks and those training levels, because we put ourselves at risk if we allow that. So yes, there may be impediments to some of these stipend seats, but they are necessary impediments that should never go away.
I value your opinion, Public Safety Director Kasheeb. I'm just really asking questions so that I understand, so that I can figure out how to get to the end of this.
So to clarify what was said, those things are already in place. So when
Right,
somebody joins the fire company and they meet the interior qualifications, which are the state requirements to be an interior firefighter, they have 1 year to meet the engine company requirements before they cannot participate in the stipend program. So we give them 1 year to meet their engine front. Their engine front requires firefighter 1. That is the only certification test that they have to take, because all the other requirements are JPR'd out, and that was designed by our volunteers who are on our training committee. And the chair is actually here in the back of the room, so if you would like to speak any further on that. My question, Chief Harp, to you is, prior to my arrival, was firefighter 1 required to be an engine firefighter at Lingelstown?
It was at one point, yes.
So I believe that when we created that requirement, I believe we actually lowered the standard a little bit for the engine front from the existing fire companies, because our goal was to make it more achievable and to limit the amount of time that it took. When we initially rolled out the stipend program, you had to be an engine rider to initially participate. We did lessen that to be interior qualified, somebody that can go inside of a burning building, or a driver operator, because obviously somebody needs to drive it to get it there. So we actually loosened those requirements up a little bit. So as far as the barriers to somebody participating in the stipend, it's pretty easy. You just have to be you have to be trained to be a firefighter.
I'm not trying to embarrass anybody or put anybody on the spot by asking these questions. I'm just trying to understand,
No.
Deputy Fire Chief Graham. You know, my point is that I want, in an ever dwindling pool of volunteer firefighters, I want as many firefighters to qualify as possible. That's all.
I agree. And I think that's all I was doing was just confirming that. I appreciate the question.
Okay.
I think that, yeah, you got it.
Chief Fogg, I want to come back to you for a moment because we had a request for 10 career firefighters, and you put forth the idea of 12. Explain to me why 12 is better than 10. How would they be deployed?
Sure. I'd like to back up for a second. We're sharing a microphone here, so we keep referring to impediments, but I think the word is requirements. And the $1.2 million for the stipend program is a fairly cheap number. I'll defer to the solicitors and lawyers on the board of what it's going to cost if we get somebody hurt or killed by not being qualified. So we're talking about a piece of paper as if it's just a piece of paper, but it's a third party saying that somebody validated they're able to put a fire out, and whether they meet our standards or not, somebody else is saying they met some standard at some time that gives you some liability protection.
I understand. And if we had some sort of OJT program or something, it would be the chief saying he qualified. And that may not be as good as a piece of paper from some third party. But yeah, I understand. Believe me, I understand. I'm not saying we want to do that. I'm just asking questions.
And the other impediment was the hours. And we could stipend hour for hour. That's not a headache for me. That's a headache for these guys. And it's a problem to handle hour for hour in terms of management wise, but it was also to encourage people to spend more than just 1 hour at the firehouse, because that doesn't really give us much coverage versus, hey, can you come for 4 hours? At least we have a block that's covered.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is kind of along the lines of Supervisor Kurtz, what she was asking. If there's a driver there and that's a typical impediment to getting that vehicle out the door, maybe that's an approach we need to at least look at or consider so that we could then add on stipend participants to the driver.
Sure.
But that's just learning. So I'm just learning, that's all.
Yeah,
So-
no, I mean, the driver kind of ties into the 12. Back to the Lower Merion thing, I think percentages are a little deceiving. So I'd be curious what Lower Merion's counting as a stipend crew. For instance, we're counting stipend crew as 4 people at each station. That totals 12 people. Traditionally, if we go with the 50% number, that means we have 6 people every day pretty much of filled slots.
And I'm sorry,
90%
yeah.
for Lower Merion may be 2 people or 3 people.
I don't know the answer to that.
And I
Yeah.
believe, I'm speaking a little out of turn because I'm not 100% sure, but I've talked to Chaz McGarvey and those guys at conferences and whatnot. I believe they're staffing 1 fire truck for the entire township, which means their total is 4 people for the entire township. So they have 3 or 4 people every day where we have 6 people every day, but our percentage is less simply because we're counting more slots. I'm a big fan of statistics. I love numbers and I love data, but I also know data can be skewed one way or the other to support an argument, and percentages are one of those things.
You should get along great with Deputy Fire Chief Graham, because that guy has more numbers than, he's got numbers for everything.
In regards to the 12, the reason for the 12, I don't like doing things half no matter what, and I believe if we don't hire 12, we would not have 24-hour, 365-day coverage for everybody. And if we do hire 12, you would have 3 every day. If I needed the very minimum a driver at every station, it would be a force multiplier. For instance, if Chief Moore had 1 driver but didn't have a second driver for the back of his truck but had 3 live-ins there, those 3 live-ins and that driver are useless without the second driver. 1 extra person there now gives us 4 extra people. So if we had 3 people on the payroll every day on a 24, what's referred to as a 24/72 shift for the fire department, that's a very normal schedule. That would give you 3 people every day. At the worst case scenario, you put all 3 people together at either Paxtonia or Colonial Park, because it's in the middle of the township, and you run 1 fire truck north and south. You're not going to meet the time distance requirements that are recommended, but it's better than nothing. And if you had 4 or 6 volunteers available, but no driver, we split them up and move them around. And now instead of having 3 career guys, we went to 9 because we had 6 volunteers that just didn't have a driver. And as tradition has shown for at least the last couple months, everybody's been more than willing to move their guys around. So if we had 2 volunteers at each station and none of them were drivers, it would be very easy to convince people to say, hey, 1 from Colonial Park, go to Paxtonia, we're sending a career driver over there. 1 from Colonial Park, go to Linglestown, we're sending a career driver up there, and we're gonna run both sides of the township. And 2 or 3 people working every day on the career side may generate 10 or 12 people in terms of a fire response. And that's an immediate response, not a delayed response. And Chief Harp is absolutely correct about the home response. They are a drastically different animal on that side of the township with the home response. The downside is that's a long turnout time, and having those career drivers may very well, in most instances, they have 1 or 2 in the station, but they may be waiting for a driver. That fire truck would go right away. Instead of that turnout time being 4 minutes, it may be 1 minute and 30 seconds, and that's a drastic difference.
You use the term force multiplier, and I guess that's what I'm really getting to. I'm trying to figure out how we can skin this cat to make everyone. Would you or would any of you concur with 1 firehouse being the full-time stipend thing, or as Deputy Fire Chief Graham rotating it, so that we had. See, what I'm trying to get away from is people committing to stipends, showing up for their shift, and then they don't get paid because there's not a full crew there, and then they get disappointed, and they say, well, I'm not doing this again because it didn't work out. So I don't know how much of that there is, but I just want to make sure it doesn't happen.
I don't think that's really happening, at least from my perspective. I think we're more often to move people around than we are to see people frustrated, and we've done that and gotten people paid. But I think that also goes away if you hire 12 people, because there would be a 3-person crew no matter what. One way or another, we're gonna have 3 people on fire trucks.
What would a 3-person full-time crew do to the volunteers? Would that be a positive, or would they be viewed as taking their job? I don't know the answer to that, guys. I'm not throwing around accusations. That's a legitimate, honest to goodness, I don't know an answer to that question.
I truthfully think it would just assist us. It's exactly what we're trying to do, is get more guys in here to help us. The volunteers are we're exhausted. Like, I mean, I can't maybe speak for everyone, but like we're running. We're running 2-3 calls maybe a day. We're running over 100 calls a month. Like, that's a lot of time away from your family, events, all that stuff you mentioned about volunteer firemen. If we can alleviate that sometimes, for maybe that automatic fire alarm in the middle of the night where the career engine might take it, or the stipend crew that's on takes it, where maybe you don't have to get up in the middle of the night to go over, but you can hear, you listen, your pager goes off, so on and so forth. I think the volunteers that are still going to come in and commit to being a volunteer fireman are going to be here regardless if there's career staff here or there's not career staff, but the career staff drastically needs to come and help us. That's what we need.
Everybody's on board with what Chief Moore said? Okay. I'm going to ask this question, and I hope those 2 guys over there don't throw things at me, because they might. We had people on the phone from Lower Marion and Upper Marion, and I'm not saying this is the right answer, because Lower Marion was not real positive about their experience. But just to give you an idea, and other municipalities have taken this approach as well. Lower Marion hired the career firefighters at the fire company level. That is the nonprofit chartered fire company who has this building and trucks, hired full-time people. Upper Marion hired full-time municipal employees as career firefighters. Now, I don't know if either or both is the right answer. We had some probably negative comments from the Lower Marion folks about whether or not it worked. I'd like obviously you've not experienced it, but I'd like your opinions as to whether one or the other is better or worse, or would work or wouldn't work. Each of you 3, I'd like an answer from each fire company.
I mean, I think, at least on our standpoint, Larry can maybe step in as well. Individually hiring them, I don't think would make any sense for our standpoint. Our money comes from the township, so I think the township should be the ones who are hiring them.
We would give you the money to pay them.
No, like
That's what I'm saying.
We operate off that money. So realistically, us hiring them, it's you hiring them. It's the township hiring them. I don't think it would work out. I don't think it would be.
Yeah, I'm not saying the Deputy Chief Graham wouldn't have control of them, wouldn't be able to move them around and that kind of stuff. I'm just questioning whether or not it would make sense to be employees of the fire company or employees of the township, that's all. Thank you.
I think there's pros and cons to either or. Like you've seen it firsthand. One way works this way, but doesn't work this way, and the other hand is the other hand. I mean, you're just gonna have to kind of come down to a point where you need to kind of sit down as a board and decide what that decision is. But either way, there's pros and cons to both. So
When I was growing up as a kid, the best marketing technique that ever existed to become a firefighter was a show called Emergency. You're trying to get the best people you can in your community to come in and work these jobs as firefighters, whether they're being paid or whether they're doing it as a volunteer. They're either going to have it in their heart 100% or they're going to want to be compensated for it. And I'm not just talking in dollars and cents today as a paycheck that they may be bringing home on a routine basis. If they're an employee of the township, there's a benefit package that goes with that, as you're well aware of. If we farm that out to each individual fire station, that goes away as to what's mandated and what you probably would wind up offering, especially when you look at retirement benefits. And I realize that you're looking at stranded costs and so forth for that, but on the opposite end of that, a good quality firefighter is looking for those things for the department they're going to call home. So if you're looking to pay people and bring them in and to provide that top level service that we're looking at, I wouldn't do it through that means. I would do it as a township employee that is going to wind up being able to advertise for the best of the best. And I will say that that's going to go a long way, especially for somebody that's looking for a career path coming right out of high school. And firefighting can be a great career path for somebody. And that's how we would like to market this. I think by having the ability to come on as a volunteer and maybe progress to be a career firefighter within your community is the best marketing strategy we could ever employ. And I really, really respectfully request you look at it from that perspective. Thank you.
I would only add that I don't think, I mean, I don't want to speak for our financial accounting people, but I don't think they want the headache and the additional stress of paying people just as pass-through money. It's just one more added burden that we're already saying there's too much to do. So it's a management oversight that the fire department would have to provide, whether or not Deputy Chief Graham's still in charge. The pay side of it, determining schedules, all that type of stuff. I don't think I would want that headache. I'd be a fool to look at the money and say I don't want it. I could hire whoever I want, but I really don't think it's worth the headache from my point of view. And from a management standpoint, I don't think it makes sense for each individual fire company.
Thank you. Understand, I don't know what I don't know.
Would you accept public comment regarding some of these topics?
Sure.
So just to give my name is Colin Weigel. I am a resident of the township, 90 South Hawks Road. I also serve as the assistant fire chief of the Colonial Park Fire Company. Just hearing some of the comments back here, I think the gentlemen, the leadership of our organizations here have done a tremendous job explaining this to you. And the rest of the board of supervisors education, because that's what I think we all feel lacks here is just education and knowledge of our service. However, respectfully, this conversation has been going on for a very long time between us as the organizations, and even then with the additions of Directors Kashiba and Deputy Chief Graham. You use the term of skinning the cat. I think we've all come to the fact that there is no skinning the cat of this.
I apologize.
Deputy Chief Graham had stated that the 10 is the bare minimum of what we want to do. 12 would be a absolutely fantastic addition to our services here. But seeing as what happened in the budget meeting of having the accepted the budget for the 10 career firefighters, Chief Moore had mentioned that we are exhausted, and that, in retrospect to all of us, and I don't want to speak for everyone standing behind me here, of our men and women of the Lower Paxton Township, but that is a light at the end of the tunnel for us. We are exhausted, as Chief Moore had said. We are exhausted. Our families are exhausted. We have discussed this again multiple times. How many stopgaps can we have? And we talk about limiting this budget to the amount of people. We talk about putting just a driver at each station. That is not safe. That is not a safe practice for me. It's not a safe practice for the best firefighter out here. You put one driver in a station, and that gives them the opportunity to respond with one person, driver only. Now, if speaking for a resident, if my house is on fire, which again, I live in the township and I fear every time I leave this township for the protection of my family, you put a fire truck with one person or even just two people coming in and that parks in front of my house, I am not getting the service that I should be getting from my services or from my emergency service of Lower Paxton Township. I think these guys have done a tremendous job. Our volunteers have done a tremendous job over the years, but we are exhausted. And I can guarantee you that if we do not get any help anytime soon, that light at the end of this tunnel goes out, it will be the end for a lot of people. Out of exhaustion, family's exhaustion. An oath that we always give to our family whenever we join this service is that family comes before the firehouse. And unfortunately for a lot of us, the case has been the firehouse has been coming first because we want to make sure your guys' families are protected. But in lieu, we are not protecting our own families. So not only does it come down to us, not only does it come down to you, it comes down to our families and everyone else here that lives in Lower Paxton Township. Thank you, sir.
I apologize for using the term skinning the cat. That was no disrespect intended. Just a common form of language that I use. I'm just trying to get to answers. As far as the driver question, that question was asked in concert with getting members to take stipends along with the driver. There's never any intent to have a truck move with one person. As a matter of fact, you can't do that, right? I mean, we have a standard in township, have to have at least 3 people in a truck. So if I said something that wasn't clear, the question about the drivers was simply to stimulate stipend participation so that people didn't show up and not receive the stipend. So do we have other comments about where they're hired or not? No? Yes?
I want to jump in. I have one question that I think for the stipend program. Is there a minimum number of hours in order to get the stipend that we have to set? I'm the new person, so this has been wonderful for me. But I thought I heard you say we couldn't do just one, and I just want to understand that.
So the Federal Labor Standards Act puts some parameters on what is considered a stipend, and we cannot stipend people at an hourly rate. So that is why if you look at the policy, it is actually $40 for a 4-hour shift. And just for clarification, when we originally started talking, we were going to do 12-hour shifts, and the 4 hours is actually something that the volunteers had requested. But we have to be careful because, and it has been reported numerous times that it's a $10 an hour stipend. And yeah, if you break it down, it is, but we cannot call it that. We have to call it a stipend for a shift, not an hourly rate. The other side of that is the money. So that is based off of if the payment that we are giving our volunteers exceeds 20% of what a career firefighter in this area would receive, it's no longer considered a stipend. So they can only make a certain amount of money. The way that we did that was we took the area, the averages from the area around us at a 5-year salary. And the reason I used 5 years was because I wanted to throw these guys a little bit of a bone. And also, most of our guys that are participating have at least 5 years in the service. That's where the $14,000 comes from.
Okay, the only other question I really have is for Lincolnstown. I think I've got a clear indication from Paxtonia and Colonial Park that you're ready for this to happen. At the beginning of your comments, you said that you're on board if it's rolled out correctly. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, sure. And that's been my concern through the whole process. To summarize it in one sentence, it needs to come in a way to truly support the volunteers, which it's being presented that way right now as we're talking, so that, A, you keep that volunteer cadre you have happy, right? They don't get a paycheck. You know, they're there to do the right thing. They're there to provide a service for their community. They don't ask for payment. They don't ask for that, but they'll ask for an attaboy every once in a while. But they'll also ask to be the officer of that rig that they worked very hard to design and work, you know, and bring up to where it is. And that's why I say just, if this goes in the direction to truly support the volunteer system that we have and supplement it, which is needed, I don't see why we can't be on board with that. I think it wouldn't be smart to be against that, right? So I said in a public meeting months back that anytime I can put a qualified person on my fire truck and I can continue doing what we're doing with it, I'm probably going to do that. You know, so that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know, President, if you have any other remarks.
Sure. I mean, our basis is home response. That is what we live and breathe off of right now. We have one live-in who's a student, but everybody else, out of our 26 active firefighters and officers, they all come from home. We do a 4-hour shift here and there, and almost all of them have a family in Linglestown. So to everybody's point here, you know, we are very committed to our community, very committed to our homes, very committed to our families. And one of the pieces that we see is that we want to make sure that, you know, people who have put in 20, 30, 40, 50 years into our organization, you know, even though they may not be fighting fire at 50 years in the organization, they still get a say in the direction of what the fire service has been. And we've had some extensive conversations across this table as well as the other table over here. And one of the ones that we had recently that stemmed out of even last week was just the structure of the fire service and what that organizational chart's going to look like. That has been something we've been asking and talking about for a better part of almost 2 years. We finally had the conversation. And I think, you know, again, not that we agree with everything, but I think we got walked away that we have a system that can work with an implementation where we said, okay, if everybody's going to have the same training standards, then it doesn't matter if you're a volunteer lieutenant or a career lieutenant. You have the same rank and structure based off your tenure in this Bureau of Fire. And generally everybody agreed to this, right? You know, so we talked about, you know, if this is what our training policy is to become a driver, then this is what everybody's going to go through. We're going to have and hold to the same standards, which creates equality within, I'm going to use the term, air quotes, sorry, but, you know, workplace that, you know, creates harmony as opposed to division amongst the ranks, where we've all seen and heard horror stories from other departments where you got a great divide and rift between the career and the volunteers, and it runs out your volunteers, and now all of a sudden you're stuck going, we got to hire 12 more. And next year we got to hire 12 more. And then the next thing you know, you went from 12 to 54 in a matter of 4 years going, how did my budget go from $1 million to $7 million? And the problem with this is once you make that grand mistake, you can't go back and fix it. So I hear what everybody's saying. I agree that we have to move forward with this in some respect, but I do applaud that there is some question and analytics that are going on as to the how and the why, so that we are hiring, to your point, good qualified individuals that are willing to stay in this system, and B, how do we support and maintain this? Because one of the benefits that Linglestown does bring, Chief Fogg said it, we're 4 minutes slow. There's a lot of times we're getting out the door and they're getting on scene. But when you have a working fire in this township, everybody generally knows you're getting the engine, the truck, the tanker, and the air unit out of Linglestown. It might take you 15 minutes to get them there, but you're getting your full resources out of us because our members are still very committed to this, and they come out of the woodwork when it's important. So I think that's something that you want to consider, that you don't run that out from again, like I said at the beginning of this, you know, inadvertently or advertently, you know, just run that away when now you're going, we need more, we need more, we need more. Hopefully that answers your question, Ms. Vecchio.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Any other questions by the board? John?
Not a question. I just want to say thank you very much for your time in this very informative session. I think we've taken enough of your time, but I genuinely appreciate it. So thank you.
Very quickly, the 3 stations had a chance to speak to their concerns or their full support. You've heard from our public safety department. Is there anything that we've not asked or any additional information we should have as we move forward to set goals, objectives, and the vision for the Bureau of Fire in Lower Paxton Township? No?
Yeah, I think I just have one thing. I think if you look at the root of what we're talking about, we're asking tonight, if there's a fire, is there fire protection in Lower Paxton Township? Take the emotional side out of it, take the requirements out of it, and the question is very simply, can we right now support, guaranteed, if there's a fire, somebody shows up, and we can't do that. So I'll defer to what Supervisor Vecchio said, is Lingelstown on board? I have a question for everybody up front, and very simply, I would like a yes or no from the board. Are each of you on board committed to hiring career firefighters in this township to guarantee fire protection?
I think where the board is at is we're still learning, and I'm not sure that we're prepared to answer that question, Chief Fogg. I want to say yes, but I also want to say that we have this awesome responsibility, and whatever we decide in the next couple of months is going to has the potential to completely restructure the fire service in Lower Paxton Township. And I think that we need to make certain that we're making the right decisions. Maybe the right answer is that we need to hire 12, as you suggested. So I don't think it's fair to ask us to answer that question until we've done our due diligence. The process that MRI laid out for us was meeting with a cross-section of the fire companies and then meeting with the public. And I think once we do that, we will be able to make that decision clearly. And I think maybe many people are leaning towards, as you guys have made clear, you need help and we want to help you, okay? We just want to figure out the right way to do that, that's all. So that's a fair question to ask.
I respect
I don't know if any of the other supervisors want to answer it yet, but I'm not prepared to answer your question yet.
I respect the responsibility you believe you have, but I would argue that ours is greater because we're
No
watching
doubt.
out for the life of the township. And I would like a commitment from this board to hire firefighters to guarantee fire protection in this township. And I'll stay here all night and answer questions until we come to an answer. If you have an alternative, I'm all ears. But we don't have an alternative. We have a gap in coverage. We have lives at risk, and we're not addressing it. And we're kicking a can down the road projectively till I don't know when.
Respectfully, Chief Fogg, I disagree with you. I think we're learning, and I think we have that obligation to learn so that we can move into the future. I understand that you need help, and these guys tell me every day you guys need help, and we want to provide it. But your responsibility to keep the public safe is sacrosanct. It's the most important thing. We could never, ever thank you enough, compensate you enough for the work that you do for us. That's just the truth. And I don't know which one of you said, I think it was you, however, is, no life is worth whatever it costs or something, and we're trying to balance the risk, and you say we balance the risk every day. And I think that's what this Board of Supervisors is trying to do, sir. We're trying to figure out where that line runs between the avoidance of risk and giving you the help that you need. And I assure you, at least for my part, I won't speak for anybody else, I will do what I believe is the right thing. And part of arriving at the answer as to what the right thing to do is having this education session and learning, because without learning, we won't know how to react. I hope you understand that not giving you that commitment tonight is not in any way any kind of slap towards the absolute outstanding work that you and your brethren have done. It's just that I don't think the Board of Supervisors is ready to answer that question yet. And I think, very honestly, again, going with the MRI report, cross-section of the fire service and the public. We've not met with the public yet, so please allow us to follow the process. We've got another simultaneous program where people are going to look at what we're going to pay these people and how we're going to compensate them and what their benefits package and what their retirement package is going to look like. So I think we're doing the right thing. And I'm sorry that we're not doing it fast enough for you, but I do commit to you that when we get to the answer, it'll be what we believe is the right answer. And that's, I think, all anybody can ask of us. And I apologize if it's not coming fast enough for you, because I understand what you mean to the township. And I don't have the words to put it into words. I just don't. Thank you isn't enough.
Excuse me, Mr. McCormick. Chief Graham, how many firefighters did you tell me went through the various processes to be cleared this afternoon for hiring? What was that number?
You're talking about our current hiring process?
Yes.
Currently, we had 25 apply. We're down to 20.
We're down to 20.
Correct.
That's 20 firefighters.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. So you did that because previous iteration of the board gave you the go-ahead to hire those firefighters.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
What's really impressive about that is that we were not able to tell them how much money they were going to make in pay and what benefits they were going to, but they still applied. That's pretty impressive. Other things that we should have asked that didn't ask? I'm sorry.
I would say that I believe that hurt our recruitment efforts, but yes, what you got to understand about the fire service is we're very dedicated people.
I understand that.
We have people that do it for free. This township has the opportunity to be the tip of the spear. We're doing really great things, and I think there's a lot of people watching what we're doing here. And I think that's why we got 25 good applicants, because they want to be a part of something great.
This is not directly related to the subject at hand, but could I ask the people that are sitting here, is regionalization of the fire service a reasonable outcome of what we're beginning today? Does anybody have any opinion on that?
So I believe regionalization is an animal in itself. My background, where I came from, was a regional department. There are good and there are bad. But what I can tell you is that when the MRI study came back and there was reference in there about regionalization, the previous board said that they were not interested in looking at that at all. So we have not even explored that, aside from the fact that I have all but daily correspondence with our partners in Susquehanna and in Swedera. And a lot of the things that we're doing are kind of a regional concept. Previous to this year, because I just have enough going on and my commitment needs to be Lower Paxton, I was the chair of the County Standards Committee for the County Fire Chiefs Association. I still serve on the board, but I'm not chairing it anymore. And a lot of the work that we've done here in Lower Paxton, we've implemented essentially throughout the county, and we're making an impact at that level through the coordination with a lot of other chief officers. So there's different ways to look at regionalization, and we're certainly involved in what's going on countywide. It's a whole different conversation that the previous board was not interested in taking part in.
I am prepared to say that I do support a career volunteer model with one qualification: if we can do it in a way that it does not undermine our volunteers.
I second.
That's where I'll stay.
I can also commit to that.
I appreciate that.
Well, that's unanimous then, or nearly unanimous. because I hold the
In
same-
regards to the combination, or I'm sorry, the regionalization, I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think we need to worry about Lower Paxton right now.
Oh,
And if we hire for Lower Paxton and we protect this township, one of two things will happen around us, because the entire area is suffering. Either the other townships will also hire to protect their townships, or they'll ask to be part of the system that we invented, like they have with most of the policies we've already developed. And either one of them is a win, because quite frankly, if we have a fire, they'll be coming this way, and if they have a fire, we'll be going that way. But that's the only two ways it'll play out. We'll start a system and they'll jump on board, or they'll start their own system. But either way, Lower Paxton is protected.
I asked that question, Chief Fogg, because you and I, when we met, you mentioned that, and we talked about it a little bit. I just wanted to get it out on the table for everyone else to hear. Anything else that we should know, gentlemen?
Sir,
Can we have public comment?
Yeah,
Can-
you wanted
please.
to say something, sir? I don't.
Is there any public comment on this issue?
Bill? Oh, all right.
Good evening. I'll be very brief, but my name is Mike Iverson. I am the Fire Chief of Swedera Township, and I am also the President of the Dauphin County Fire Chiefs Association. I sat here for the last 2 hours, and I heard the exact same things that we hear in our township and throughout Dauphin County. I did take some notes. So Chief Graham mentioned he's in constant communication with us during the day, especially during the day. And I'm here to tell you that a lot of times during the week, there is multiple units from Swedera Township and Lower Paxton Township that are out of service at the same time. which is very scary considering we rely very heavily on Lower Paxton Township and vice versa. It's a disaster that's waiting to happen. We appreciate all the support that we do get from Lower Paxton. When your firefighters come to Swadera Township, they are ready to work. They do an excellent job. I want to address the career versus volunteer concern. Career firemen, if implemented the correct way, do not hurt the volunteers. Swadera Township has taken a similar approach. We have a stipend program that varies from yours. There's all types of different variations, but we decided to hire part-time firefighters first. And the way we did it was there's 3 shifts available, or 3 positions available every day, 7 to 7. When we went to hire them, I told our board that it's not going to fix our problem. It's going to fill some holes here and there. It's inconsistent. And you will have the same problem if you just hire drivers. A lot of times our volunteers, we'll get more volunteers at the station when we do have career staffing. Our career staffing helps train the volunteers. They help them get through their rookie books. They help do driver training. It really works well. We were one of the first ones in this area to do part-timers, so I like to say that we got a really good group of firefighters. We're on our 3rd hiring phase right now, and we still don't have enough. We could probably hire 50 part-time firefighters. It's not going to be enough because it's not consistent. When we hired them, the township handles all the pay. I would highly discourage you to put that on the fire companies. You heard them say it, they're already exhausted. That's a whole nother animal for them to try and manage that, let alone, mixing that with running all their calls. I was a little, I'll say, jealous when the advertisement went out for career firefighters in Lower Paxton Township for full-time. That's a goal that we've been trying to obtain. And I say that, I'm also happy. I'm happy for the firemen here, Chief Graham and the director. But just like the volunteers, we are going to be competing for the same group of individuals. So the more people that get hired, whether it's here, Susquehanna, Swadera Township, that pool is going to continue to shrink. And you're going to have a hard time finding good people because it's going to compete. And it's going to be a competition. It'll be a competition with pay, with benefits. So I want to encourage you to listen to the volunteers, which this is a great setting. And I want you to understand that it is not just here. And they're all saying the same thing, all over the county, all over the state. They need help. They're exhausted. We're trying to get there. And if you have any questions for me, you can leave my contact info. Chief Graham has it. You can contact me. So,
thank you, Chief, for your comments. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Jay Purdy, 4731 Duke Street. And sitting here listening tonight, and one of the cautions that went out was, we need time to learn. We need to learn this. Well, every day that you're learning, there's a chance that that day will be the day that nobody can respond from a station in the township. You need to, on this subject, you need to learn to expedite, because somebody could die 2 days from now because a truck can't get out. And if we can equate this, and I'm just giving this in terms of advice, I'm not attacking anyone. If we can put it in terms of military, I think the guys and ladies in this room have expressed that they're surrounded and they need some answers. They need some relief as soon as you can. You can't leave them surrounded. So I would ask you that you expedite this, put it on the front burner, make it however quickly you can move the process ahead. Thank you very much.
Mr. Purdy, thank you for your comments.
Bill Minsker. Very quickly, I laid on your dais paper dealing with population. I was curious and really very proud that, as you've, I think, are well aware, Lingelstown, Paxton, and Colonial Park are part of a unique volunteer system where we are the biggest municipality in the state with an all-volunteer service. I've heard different figures to back that up. With the help of the staff at Representative Joe Kerwin's office, I tried to get the newest figures for you as to where we are population-wise. Many of the figures are based on the 2020 census. Some of the figures of municipalities are newer. So what I've given you there on the sheet puts Lower Paxton Township at 15th, largest municipality in the state of cities and townships, not counting boroughs because they're all smaller. There are 8 cities only out of 56 cities in Pennsylvania that are larger than us, and there are 6 townships out of 1,546 that are larger than us. We are number 15. So I wanted you to see that. There are some other interesting things there too that you can notice. For example, under townships, they're the smallest township in the state. East Keating Township in Clinton County has 7 people in its township. And there are other items there too you might find interesting. I would like to speak just very briefly, as I mentioned a little while ago, about the volunteer service. I am very proud to be a part of this Army of Blue that you are looking at, which is the backbone of the fire service in this township. There are some things about Lingelstown which I am very proud of. I am speaking about these things for myself and for my fire company only, but these are things that I don't hear people talk about. And Lingelstown, I think, is in a rather unique position, and I would like you to know a couple of these things. First of all, we have 3 buildings. We operate with 3 buildings, one of which is devoted totally today to community activity. The other 2 buildings are our apparatus buildings. We have a total of 12 pieces of equipment. 12 pieces of equipment. There is no fire station in this county that has that much apparatus. In our total statistics from last year, from 2025, we had a total of 842 alarms, the least of the 3 of the township companies. Of those 842 alarms, we had an average of 8 firefighters responding to those alarms. 8 firefighters, all volunteers, and 2 fire police. We have in our operation 8 different facets of operation. It's typical with the volunteer fire company, they will have 1, maybe, a pumper, or they'll have 2, a rescue truck, or a tower truck, or a tanker. We have 8 different facets which of our crew, these people need to be trained in order to operate these different 8 facets, 7 of which are connected to firefighting. We have a pumper, we have a ladder truck, we have a tanker, we have a rescue truck, we have an air light unit which responds all over central Pennsylvania. We have 2 chief's vehicles, we have a squad, and we have a forest fire crew. In addition to that, we have an auxiliary. They don't fight fire, but they support us, and they've been a part of us almost since we started in 1934. My concern is we continue, as you're hearing, to back up the volunteers. Lingelstown has huge support from the public because we also do things for the public. We are very involved all year long with what the public is doing, and they support us when it comes time, especially for fundraising. So I am speaking just to support the idea that we must continue to support the volunteers in this township. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minsker. Any other public comment on this issue?
Joe Craig, 5309 Arnold Drive. Listening to a few things here, I am a member of Paxtonia, but I'm not going to speak related to the fire company directly. A little bit of a history of me. I've been in the fire service in Central PA since the early 90s, mid-90s. I left Central PA. Used to live in Swordera Township, was a life member at one of the fire companies there. Moved back to Lower Paxton Township about 5 years ago. Couple things that have been said here are concerning from the board. First thing is you say you're learning, and it was brought up that this was passed in the budget last year. And I heard some people say, well, we're new board members. I mentioned to another board last year, it doesn't matter that you're new board members. The Lower Paxton Board of Directors passed the budget. You should be honoring that budget, not coming back midway through the year, say, well, we need to learn about it. Why'd the board pass the budget if the board did not learn about it? Yes, you may be new board members, and I understand you individually need to learn about it, but you should still also honor the respect of the board that preceded you in the passing of that budget. They're not asking for more people than what was passed. They're asking for what was passed. One thing that was said, and I just want to make sure, and I understand, and I'm sure the management wouldn't ensure of this. You say drivers, and I always worry about that, coming from political persons who are managing a township, because I've seen it brought up. Oh, well, we can have road crew drivers drive the apparatus. They are driver operators. They're not just drivers. So I just want to make sure you understand, if you're going to put people in stations to be drivers, they're not just there to drive the truck and then not know what to do. So you don't want to take that advantage there. One thing to keep in mind, I've heard it brought up about police department and how back in the 50s, oh, you look like you'd be a good cop. Here, let me teach you how to write a ticket. That doesn't happen anymore, correct? They have to go through classes and those certifications. Those certifications are there. How many volunteer police officers do you have? How many volunteer police officers are there in this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania other than fire police? I don't think there's probably any. You have the volunteer fire service. Guess what? The volunteer fire service, these volunteer firefighters, have to put in hundreds of hours, over 100 hours, just to get the minimum standard to reach your firefighter 1. Those are volunteer hours taken away from family and also work. They have to work their full-time jobs. So then you have your in-house training. And oh, by the way, that's just the basic standards. If you ride a ladder truck, another 80 to 100 plus hours in aerial device and truck training. If you ride a rescue truck, add about 300 more hours of rescue training to get certain certifications. Even EMS is very rarely is EMS volunteer anymore. Why is it that the fire service, when there's a passed budget that's already been passed, is the township now saying, well, we need to learn to keep you from being burned out before we commit to honoring a budget that this board passed. Whether it's these individuals, the board of Lower Paxton Township passed that budget. So to sit there and say you can't commit to honoring the budget that was passed, that's not really very good stewardship of being on the board. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. We,
Oh, hang on a minute. We're going to save the best for last. So, sir, he asked you a question, and you rounded about it until the rest of the board said that they support it, and then you jumped in alongside. Why won't you answer his question?
what question are you asking?
Do you support the hiring of professional career firemen?
I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the other board members.
I'm asking you the question again.
And I absolutely support having qualified firefighters available to fight fires, whether they're career or volunteer. And my only concern, as other people have said, is I support the implementation of career firefighters as long as there's no way that it causes volunteers to leave our service. That's all.
That's not the goal at all. Hiring the career guys is going to supplement the volunteers. And as Chief Iverson stated, when his career guys are there, his volunteer staffing hours go up, correct? Okay. So just as long as we're on the same page here. So we are tired. We are exhausted. I've been doing this for 32 years. It's time to take a break. You have a chance to give us that break so I can continue to do what I love for another 15 years so I can fight fire with another fourth generation Rodkey. But here we are having a discussion on something that was passed that Mrs. Thompson said in the very beginning of this. So I'm just going to sum this up. You want to see what we go through on a day-to-day basis? I'll be at the firehouse tomorrow morning at 8. You can come along and do a ride-along, and you can see how exhausting this is. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tim Murphy. I live at 1524 Pine Hollow Road. No question about it. These guys are important. We need them. I was reminded of that 2 days ago when I witnessed a two-car crash on Route 22, called 911, and along comes the police car, and right behind them was the fire truck. And those guys did a tremendous job cleaning up the road, taking care of the spilled oil, engine coolant, motor oil, you name it. And that's just a small part of the major job they do for the township. Supervisors, I commend you for taking this on. This is a major decision, no question about it. I've sat in this room over the last several years and heard discussions about a number of different topics, including the replacement of fire apparatus and who was next in line and how are they going to get coordinated among the three companies. This is a much bigger decision, and I understand why you want to be certain of what you're getting into and what you're getting the township into. As Mr. McCormick said early on, this is a decision that can affect the township for 6 years, maybe 60 years. So it's all very important. I'm happy to hear that you're going to have a public meeting, and I'll just throw out a couple things that I would like to hear discussed at that meeting. The most obvious, from a taxpayer standpoint, what is this going to do to our taxes? Not just this year, but over time. There was mention today about not knowing what benefit packages we're talking about or anything. All of those have to get factored into what the real costs are going to be over time. On the plus side, is this going to have any effect on our homeowners insurance? Because we're going to have a change with the nature of our fire protection. I'm not saying it's going to be better or worse. I don't know. But if there is anything that can be offered along those lines, I'd appreciate hearing that. So I'll see you at the public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And some of those issues you've raised are the issues that are giving us pause as we try to figure out how to roll this out. It's not a question of if we roll out a program or not. The question is how we roll it out and how we maximize not only maximize the effectiveness of it, but we build it. Again, the objective of the board is to establish goals, objectives, and a vision. And all we want to do is make sure that whatever we do is done so that it lasts that 60 years. I'm sorry that I'm not supporting you well enough, the guy that questioned my integrity. I'm just trying to do the best job I can. And I'm making a decision for 55,000 people and for 3 fire companies and a multitude of people who volunteer as firefighters that I value very, very much. So what you see as reluctance, what you see as hesitation is not that at all. It's a grasp of the enormity of the decision that we're about to make. And it's not only the firefighters that we want to, certainly you're the most important aspect of this, but we want to take into consideration the public as well, as was brought up. And I'm sorry it's taking us longer than you want, but I think it's prudent and responsible for us to do that. That's all. So thank you. And I'm sorry if we're not doing it fast enough for you. Our intent is to do it right, not fast. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Grant Garland. I live at 2220 Parkway West. I joined the fire service in June of 2002. I started at Linglestown and I've moved all over the county because I like to follow the shiny objects and move when new opportunities arise. I've been an employee for the township of the Public Works Department for 17, and for the last 10, I've been the police department mechanic. I gotta tell you, I've been exposed to a lot of different leadership types over the last, 20 years of my life, in and out of the emergency services and in the public sector. I gotta tell you, the 2 gentlemen sitting over there in white are the 2 finest leaders I've ever had the pleasure of being a part of any kind of organization.
I think we agree with you.
I implore you, if any of you sitting up there have not had the opportunity to look at their credentials, I beg you to do so. Do me a favor, Google Adam Kashiba. Look at the list of articles that have his name in it. Okay. I hope that their credentials are enough alone to make you feel confident in making the decision to pay firefighters in this township. I've got to say, what brought me back to Lower Paxton Township, I moved back here 2 years ago to help take care of my parents. Turns out they needed to take care of me, but that's a whole nother story. I was the president at Grantville Volunteer Fire Company for 2 years and the vice president the year before that. I got tired of begging a township for help. The chicken barbecues, the yard sales, the soup sales, the spaghetti dinners. I would rather my firemen bring fire trucks to my house and get my kid out of the house than sell soup, spaghetti, and chicken barbecues. The volunteer fire department and a paid fire department's responsibility to the community is just that. It's just that. It is to protect your community. I hope you understand that. I know that there's varying opinions around here about what a volunteer fire department is supposed to do, and I understand when you're raising money, you have to be part of a community. No one's saying we're not being a part of a community, but the important part is to get qualified people there fast, especially when it's my 9-year-old or my 12-year-old. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Is there other public comment? Seeing none, I want to give a hearty thank you for the vast amount of time you've dedicated to us this evening. I didn't know it was going to take that long. If you guys have anything to add afterwards, you know how to get in touch with us, email or phone numbers. I do want to say thank you to everyone in this room who's part of the fire service, and I understand that saying thank you is not enough, but you are appreciated, truly, deeply appreciated, and we will get answers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we're not. But the firefighters are leaving.
How long do you think your piece is going to be?
I don't know. Sorry.
Unfortunately, Mr. Officer, you still have to stay.
Yep.
Still have to stay. We're not done. Huh? We probably have another 40 minutes. All right? Yeah, she just came. There she is. Okay.
How are you?
What's that? I may want that, actually.
All right, give me a second. Oh, I have.
Fire a lot more.